Chapter 66. Ambush and Kill. Translator. 549,690,339. Currently, most of the top rebels and evil god sect members have been suppressed, and all cities are under Federation control. However, many rebels did not give up after they dispersed, and with the support of the evil god sect, they started to launch guerrilla attacks on the Federation. Because we are short of manpower and some cultivators and evil god sect cultists have infiltrated the rebels, our military's patrol teams have suffered some casualties recently. On the way to join their squad, 2nd Lieutenant Jason Raven briefed Jack Clark and the others on the current situation. Soon, they arrived at their squad. Seeing the 10 armored cars equipped with machine guns and machine gun cannons and 2 sci-fi-like main battle tank squads before them, Jack Clark and the other 3 were shocked. They originally thought it would be a patrol team of a dozen or so people, but they didn't expect such fierce equipment. Jason Raven complained, "For us, facing the rebels head-on would be a piece of cake. The real trouble comes from those cultivators hiding in the dark. They hide among ordinary people, and it's difficult to predict their sudden attacks. If they miss, they take advantage of the complex terrain to escape, and their speed is so fast that we can't catch up. There are also those who hide in civilian houses far away and use rockets and sniper rifles to attack us. Although these ordinary weapons don't have much power, they are very troublesome. We can't use heavy artillery since we need to protect ordinary people, and we can't chase them on foot either. That's why those guys have become increasingly arrogant in the past few days." Jack Clark nodded. 2nd Lieutenant Raven, we understand your concern. We'll deal with those cultivators hidden in the crowd, and you'll deal with the rebels. In his perception, the soldiers here emitted a first-layer heaven chi blood aura, which was stable and heavy. This was a special Federation cultivation method that mainly focused on strengthening the body and assisting with various powerful weapons. Once they formed a battle formation as a group, their firepower would be terrifying. But their individual combat abilities were weak, at least before breaking through the 4th-layer heaven. Unlike Marshall Heights School, which aimed to cultivate geniuses, the military emphasized teamwork, and most people who joined the military had average talent. After all, the geniuses had already been discovered during high school. They joined the military after high school graduation because their talent was insufficient, but they were unwilling to live an ordinary life. Jason Jong told Jack Clark about these general facts when he asked earlier, but he didn't go into detail on specific information. Jason Raven politely said, "We'll need your help when the time comes." Justin Wellen smirked. "Actually, one prefer charging under a hail of bullets and smashing those guys to pieces with my shield." Hearing his words, Jack Clark and Zach Lyons, the White Veil, ignored him. No wonder. He was wearing bulletproof black armor and carrying a heavy alloy shield that was more than 10 centimeters thick. Under those circumstances, even heavy gunfire could not harm him. But could the others withstand that? At this time, Zach Lyons, who had previously talked to Jack and ranked 50th in the martial arts arena, asked doubtfully, 2nd Lieutenant Raven, aren't there any strong cultivators in the military? There are, but they form separate special squads and are not located here. After the briefing, the convoy set off. 2 main battle tanks were positioned at the front and rear, sandwiching 10 armored cars in the middle, while the 4 of them took positions in the off-road convertible vehicles in front and back. Soon, the armored convoy left the bustling military-controlled area and entered the ordinary urban area filled with low-rise flat houses. A sense of desolation, bleakness, and gloom suddenly engulfed them. After more than 3 months of chaos, the city's economy had deteriorated. Only a few scattered vendors could be seen along the roadside, selling various daily necessities. Although there were some people on the streets, most of them hurried along with sallow faces, showing signs of malnutrition. As the Federation military's armored convoy passed by, the people's faces showed awe, while some children curiously looked at the soldiers in the vehicles. Especially the 4 men in black armor, who were either sitting or standing on the front and back off-road convertible vehicles. Their tall and sturdy figures attracted much attention. This was the purpose of the patrol team: deterrence. When ordinary people saw the Federation's military patrolling daily and the rebels hiding in the dark like rats, the space for the rebels to survive among the public would shrink. Moreover, the Federation military is only responsible for suppressing the chaos, and a new system composed of local residents is being established. When the new official system is established later, and various legal systems are in favor of ordinary people, the rebels will have nowhere to hide because the entire Koroya will be their enemy. The rebels also understand this, so they have been constantly creating chaos with the evil god sect cultists recently, trying to deter and delay. Soon, the convoy entered a narrow street, with pedestrians and low bungalows on both sides, and Jack Clark, who was standing on the off-road vehicle, changed his expression slightly. Be careful. In a low shout, feeling the impending danger, Jack Clark's silhouette flashed as he jumped off the off-road vehicle. Just as he shouted, a rocket roared from more than 30 meters away, completely disregarding the life and death of the ordinary people around him. But at this moment, a small device on the first main battle tank emitted a red beam, and the beam flashed past the rocket, causing it to explode in midair. Bang! The hot fireball burst open, and the powerful explosive shockwave mixed with metal fragments radiated in all directions, sweeping through a range of tens of meters. Two ordinary people on the roadside screamed in pain when caught in the explosion. Jack Clark's gaze swept over the small device on the tank, and a touch of surprise flashed in his eyes before he shouted, "Leave the guy 35 meters away to me." Having said that, the muscles in his legs swelled slightly, and with a power explosion, Jack Clark burst out with terrifying speed, turning into a black shadow and instantly crossing more than 30 meters. With a thud, Jack Clark stepped on a red brick and leapt up to the two-story rooftop. There, a dark-skinned middle-aged man frantically dropped the rocket launcher and grabbed the automatic rifle hanging on his chest, wanting to shoot at Jack Clark. But, puff! The sharp sword skill tore through the air, and with a flash of white light, the man was instantly killed by Jack Clark. Boom! At this moment, the wall of the staircase room on Jack Clark's side collapsed, and a burly figure rushed towards Jack Clark from the dust, his whole body exuding a strong murderous aura. It was clear that this was a premeditated ambush. The convoy behind was also attacked again, and several fierce shadows rose from the panicked crowd and pounced on the armored vehicles, trying to attack the soldiers inside. Justin Wellen and the other three jumped off the vehicle and blocked them with their blood-chi bursting. At the same time, many armed rebels appeared on the surrounding bungalows, and the sound of gunfire erupted, creating chaos all around. Countless gravel splashed and fell on the battle armor, making a crackling sound. Amidst the smoke and dust, a spark erupted as Jack Clark blocked an attack with both hands holding the sword. Immediately afterwards, he counterattacked with a wind-whistling slash. Clang clang clang. Knife lights tore through the air amidst the smoke and dust, creating a piercing whistling sound. The friction between the blade and the air produced a red light that caused dazzling sparks to burst open continuously. Boom! Suddenly, the burly figure rolled out from the dust and landed at the edge of the rooftop 2 feet away. How is it possible? Wasn't he just a second-layer heaven freshman? The burly man with a large machete in hand looked shocked and doubtful in front of him. Jack Clark stood there with a cold expression in his eyes, holding the sword and said, "Another second-layer heaven peak cultivator, but you're not a cultist of the evil god sect." Unlike the cultist he had killed yesterday, this man had demonstrated an extremely solid cultivation foundation during the battle just now, at Nobleban at. His physique and true strength had reached the second heaven peak, and every move he made unleashed a terrifying power of nearly 4,000 kilograms. The degree of true strength condensation was not less than Jack Clark's. On top of that, his sword skill, as proficient as instinct, had withstood more than 10 moves from Jack Clark in an instant without being at a disadvantage. If it had been Justin Wellen or Zach Lyons, that strike might have actually caught them off guard and inflicted heavy injuries if not death. Unfortunately, he met Jack Clark, whose intuition had sensed the hidden murderous intent from the side the moment he jumped onto the rooftop. At this moment, Jack Clark's eyes slowly turned red, filled with an intense desire for slaughter. Regardless of whether he was an evil god sect cultist or not, he would kill first and ask questions later. Chapter 67. Be Stronger. Translator. 549,690,339. The burly man, looking at Jack, whose killing intent was soaring, licked his lips, his murderous intent becoming even more intense. "Kid, you must be among the top most talented in the new students, right? In their information, these senior 1 trial freshmen have only cultivated for 2 months, each just having made a breakthrough to the second layer heaven, all of them geniuses. But the youth in front of him, having just entered the second layer heaven, was able to put up a fight against him. This kind of person would definitely belong to the most talented in school. The most talented. Jack's lips curled into a playful smile. "I'm only ranked 49th on the school's new student ranking. What do you think about that? What? How is that possible?" The burly man couldn't believe it. A genius who managed to break through to the second layer heaven in just 2 months and whose combat power is comparable to the second heaven peak, was ranked only 49th. So just how monstrous are the ones in the front? And these are just freshmen from a first-class university in the eastern summer country of the Federation. Has the eastern summer become this terrifying? Or is it that the Koroya people are too incompetent, not being able to break through to the second layer heaven after cultivating for over a decade? In a moment, the burly man's life was thrown into doubt by a simple sentence from Jack. Jack was not interested in wasting time with him, his voice icy. Now it's your turn to take my strike. As Jack let out a low roar, his muscles bulged and his whole body suddenly expanded. A brutal and overbearing aura burst out, resembling an enraged elephant. Boom. Tattoos appeared on Jack's body. With a stomp, the floor shook and he instantly transformed into a black afterimage. His ears were filled with the shrieking of a raging wind due to his extreme speed, resembling thunder. In his hand, the 2-meter-long straight blade struck so swiftly that its physical form almost disappeared, transforming into a red and white light appearing above the burly man's head. Simply terrifying speed. It was so fast that the burly man's consciousness almost couldn't react, and the red and white light from the blade sent him into a panic. Under the threat of death, he instinctively raised his knife to block. Boom. The burly man's face changed instantly as their knives touched. He felt an unstoppable force, akin to an avalanche or a tsunami. Crack. At Nobleman at. Under the terrifying force, the burly man's knife fiercely sank and crushed his shoulder blade. Following that, under the overwhelming force of the avalanche and tsunami, he knelt on the ground. Splat. Blood spurted from the burly man's mouth as he was wounded by the strike, followed by an even more intense aura of death advancing on him. He had no time to react. A red and white light instantly crossed his neck. Jack, having instantly killed the burly man, didn't change his gaze. His figure flickered as he dived from the building. The moment he landed, he turned into a gust of wind and swept over the street. Ordinary people only saw a blurry dark shadow flash. It was not until then that the burly man's neck spurted hot blood and his body fell with a heavy thud. The soldiers on the armored vehicle were controlling the heavy machine guns and cannons to suppress the rebels. The horrifying large caliber bullets left big holes in the walls. Especially the cannons. These ordinary brick houses simply could not withstand the heavy machine gun and cannon fire. They were shattered like rubble, along with the rebels behind them. Boom. At this moment the main tank unleashed a blast of fire, collapsing an abandoned building dozens of meters away, burying the machine gunner and the rebels inside. By the time Jack returned, more than half of the dozens of rebels ambushed around had been killed, and the rest were frightened by the terrifying firepower and were fleeing in panic. As for Justin Wellen and the others, they were in a narrow alley chasing 4 cultists dressed in black robes, attempting to escape through the complex terrain. Zach Lyons and White Veil were each holding off 1 second heaven cultist. They held an overall advantage in strength, but the cultists were more experienced, making it difficult for them to take them down quickly. Justin Wellen, dressed in his battle armor and holding a heavy shield, was engaged in combat with 2 cultists in another alley. His strong defense allowed him to ignore their attacks, but he also found it difficult to take them down quickly. Because he lacked a strong offensive method, he could only continuously charge and block. However, if any cultist tried to escape, he would exert his full strength, crashing into them and forcing them to avoid revealing their backs. At this moment, Jack Clark's figure blinked in the distance, sprinting over with a whistling wind, and the heavy battle boots landed on the ground, emitting a dull vibration. Seeing him, Justin Wellen's eyes lit up, and he excitedly said, "Jack, hand over the guy on the left to you." "All right. Bender." Jack Clark's eyes were icy cold. His figure flickered, covering more than 10 meters like a ghost, appearing in front of a somewhat skinny cultist. Such terrifying speed scared the cultist who held the crescent-curved blade and whose aura was in the early stage of second layer heaven. He hurriedly swung several blade shadows at Jack Clark. Boom. Jack Clark's right arm muscles swelled, and he swung his blade. An ear-piercing shriek rose in an instant, tearing through the air and annihilating those blade shadows. The terrifying blow cut the cultist's curved blade and upper body in 2. Thud. The broken curved blade and corpse fell to the ground. The blood sprayed out, dyeing the ground red and giving off a strong bloody smell. Next to the corpse, Jack Clark, in his dark red armor, stood with his blade, emitting an invisible aura of dominance. His murderous aura was intimidating, causing the faces of some civilians peeking from behind their windows to turn pale. Not only those civilians, but even Justin Wellen and the other cultist were frightened by Jack Clark's power. Everyone was in the second layer heaven. Why could you kill him with 1 slash? At this time, Jack Clark slightly turned his head to look at the two, an invisible murderous intent in his eyes sent chills down their spines. The cultist fighting Justin Wellen tensed up suddenly, and his reaction slowed down. Justin Wellen would naturally not miss this opportunity, and his entire physique burst with true strength. Mysterious martial heavy lean. With a low shout, Justin Wellen's entire body glowed with an earthy brilliance, and he shot out like a cannonball, his thick shield slamming into the cultist. With such tremendous force, the cultist was slammed into the wall of a bungalow behind him. The wall instantly collapsed, being punched through by a hole with a diameter of 3 meters. Or maybe, half the wall had collapsed. Cough, cough. After a few dry coughs, a dusty Justin Wellen walked out with his shield, with fresh red blood dripping from the shield covered with sharp spikes. Having killed an enemy, Justin Wellen was in a good mood and couldn't help but joke. Jack, one feel like you, also in the second layer heaven, are several times stronger than me. At this time, Jack Clark had already put away his murderous intent. He shook his head slightly, several times as exaggerated, I'm only a little stronger than you. As for the earlier cultist at the early stage of the second layer heaven, his physique was equivalent to the first layer heaven. His blood color true strength collapsed under my attack, and it's quite normal for me to kill him with one blow in such a situation. If I had to fight him many rounds before killing him, wouldn't it show that we're weak, right? Justin Wellen wasn't sure, but when you put it that way, it does seem right. Wait a minute, why do I feel like you're calling me weak? Mr. Willard, you're different. Your main cultivation method is defense, not strong in attack. Being able to pin down 2 cultists just now already proves your strength. That's more like it. The 2 of them walked out of the alley at this point. Looking at the 2 of them covered with dust, Carl Raven jumped down from the armored car, expressing concern, are you 2 okay? We're fine. Carl Raven's face revealed a smile, that's good to hear. It was fortunate you were there. Otherwise, those guys would have definitely managed to escape after a little disturbance. Meanwhile, Zach Lyons and White Veil also finished off their opponents and walked over, their bodies emitting a bloody smell. Everyone waited for a moment, and the newly formed law enforcement team arrived. They were in charge of post-battle cleanup while Jack Clark and the others continued their patrol. It seemed that the fight just now was but a minor episode. Chapter 68. God's Creation Plan. Translator. 549,690,339. At the same time when Jack Clark and his squad were being attacked, another squad led by Howard Lee in the other part of the city also encountered an assault. The attackers were still a combination of rebels and ordinary cultivators, catching the squad off guard. As both convoys were engaged in battle, a flying vessel resembling an airship floated at an altitude of 10,000 meters over the city, with several officers looking down from above. Behind them, more than a dozen staff members were busily working in front of computers, with some of the sci-fi equipment constantly flashing with colorful lights. At Nobleman at. Report. The energy detector has detected 2 unfamiliar 4th layer heaven fluctuations, but the other party is cunning and didn't give us a chance to lock on. In the citywide fixed point lightwave detection, several suspicious moving crowds have been detected in the south of the city, and the Falcon Squad has been called to keep track. Report. No suspicious targets were found around Squad Allen A5 during the attack. Traces of a small group of rebels were found outside Ross Town, 47 kilometers east of the city. Shall we dispatch a mixed ground-air team to suppress them? Keep monitoring. Don't worry about RHE's small group of rebels. Our target is the main force of the Blood God sect that fled here. Don't scare RHE snakes off prematurely. Yes. On the rooftop of the highest building in Leicester City, General Laird Hawk, dressed in a military uniform, stood at RHE edge with a telescope, looking over the surroundings. After a long time, Laird Hawk said in a deep voice, these guys hide really well. With so many geniuses showing up, they still can control themselves from taking action. The adjutant next to him nodded slightly. The people of the evil god sect have always been good at hiding. They've been working secretly for years, and only stood up this time. Now that the Blood God sect and the Giant God sect were hit by the Federation's thunder, most of their experts were killed, and the rest became frightened birds. These 2 days, our multiple attempts to bait them only lured out some ordinary cultists, and it might be difficult to find them in the short term. Bender. Also, I feel that the experts who followed the convoy should have been exposed, otherwise, only 2 squads would have been attacked. The ones they hate the most are the federal genius. Laird Hawk nodded slightly. Your analysis makes sense, As long as they don't want to give up the Koroya pathway, they won't be able to hide for long. By the way, RHE higher-ups are preparing to use this place as a trial point for the new generation, getting ready for the upcoming God's Creation Plan 1. Also, have the logistics department equip those freshmen with some auxiliary weapons. In RHE's civilized era, the battles are still just about slashing each other, their techniques are too simple. Jack Clark and Justin Wellen stood on the off-road vehicle in the middle of the squad, their eyes occasionally scanning the pedestrians with awe on RHE's side of the road, wary of possible enemies. At this moment, the shield-wielding Justin Wellen said enviously, "Jack, you've already killed 3 cultists, right? All of them are second-layer heaven. According to the school's given price, a second-layer heaven cultist is worth 3 contribution points. That is to say, Jack Clark earned 9 points in just 2 days. It was equivalent to the reward he received for 2 months at school. Not bad, just good luck," Jack Clark smiled. Although 9 contribution points seemed a lot, it was actually only equivalent to $9,000. In the black market, it's tens of thousands. And this stuff came from the lives of 3 second-layer heaven experts. When calculated like this, one would find that the values of both sides were completely unequal. However, many times the price cannot be calculated like this because contribution points can be exchanged for officially monopolized cultivation resources, which cannot be bought even with money. Contribution points can only be obtained through schools or official channels. No matter how rich you are, you can't convert money into contribution points. There won't be a situation where a tycoon donates millions to the government and can get thousands of contribution points to waste at will. In the High Martial era, the rich were just wealthy. It was those peak powerhouses who controlled power and resources, those king-level existences that changed the colors of heaven and earth with a single thought. This is also why people like Justin Wellen, Matt Watkins, and others need to go to school. Moreover, the exchange of high-level resources requires authorization. Ordinary cultivators don't have the qualifications for exchanging high-level resources, so even if the rich can get some contribution points, they can only get low-level resources. Justin Wellen rolled his eyes. "I knew you would say that. Just luck, not bad, what a ghost." Facing Justin Wellen's complaints, Jack Clark just smiled and then reminded him, "All right, we'll talk more when we get back. Pay attention to our surroundings." Yes. Justin Wellen's countenance turned solemn, and he concentrated on his surroundings. Although they looked cool standing on the off-road vehicle, it was actually quite dangerous. If the enemy had sniper rifles, they would be the first targets, not the soldiers inside the armored car. It was evident that they were treated as another type of bait, and most of the freshmen noticed this. However, no more attacks occurred during the morning. At noon, everyone returned to the hotel to eat and rest. According to the schedule, Jack Clark and the others had no tasks in the afternoon, and everyone could stay in the hotel to cultivate or team up to search for cultist tracks actively. If it were in school, these students might rest after cultivating for 2 hours, but after experiencing continuous battles, everyone felt a sense of urgency, desperately wanting to get stronger. As a result, Justin Wellen and the others went to the military base for cultivation in the afternoon, but Jack came to the basement level 1. The hotel had been requisitioned as a lodging base for supporting students from various schools, and the underground garage was also converted, sealed off, and turned into the logistics department. Seeing the youth coming out of the elevator, the female staff member behind the desk enthusiastically said, "Hello, what would you like to exchange? I have an 80% discount exchange privilege at school. Can one use it here?" Jack asked. The female staff member smiled and said, "Yes, both the school system and the military base here are connected to the Heavenly Intelligence System, and the privileges are universal." Jack nodded. "That's good. I want to exchange 2 level 1 life crystals. Okay. Please enter your school and student ID on the computer for verification." Jack sat in front of the computer and entered South Sky Marshall Height and his student ID is required. Verification passed. Please wait a moment. Soon, 2 white multifaceted small crystals appeared in Jack's hand. By the way, Student Clark, here is a set of battle auxiliary items prepared by the military for you. Please check it. Battle auxiliary items. Jack was slightly startled, looking at the female staff member taking a briefcase-sized box from the shelf behind her. The female staff member put the briefcase on the table and reminded, "The items inside are explosive, please handle them carefully, and there's an instruction manual after you open it." Explosives. Jack's expression changed, and he did not dare to be careless. Carrying the briefcase, Jack returned to the hotel room before deciding to exchange with his realm of thought. 2 life crystals were enveloped by an invisible power, silently turned into powder, but only 8 points attribute were converted this time. Glancing at the attribute page, Jack focused his attention on RHE small box on the table, curious about what was inside. Click. The briefcase was opened, and inside quietly lay 9 differently shaped metal items, a sci-fi style pistol, and an instruction manual. Triggered high explosive metal bomb, suitable for long range delivery, explodes upon impact after disarming, effective killing range of 5 meters, shockwave coverage of 10 meters. Sticky delayed bomb, suitable for special operations, can be attached to target objects with a choice of 3 seconds, 5 seconds, or 10 seconds delayed explosion, extremely strong penetration. Induction shock bomb, suitable for long-range delivery, forms a shockwave instantly upon explosion, highly penetrating, extremely lethal to 4th-layer heaven organisms and below. Black steel automatic pistol, 20 mm caliber, maximum ammunition capacity of 9 bullets, bullets propelled by special metal explosives, strong recoil, can blow up a regular mutated beast skull in one shot. This item is given out for free for the first time, subsequent bombs and bullets can be exchanged with contribution points. After reading the instructions, Jack was a bit surprised, the military's newbie package. Bombs and pistols. Jack picked up the pistol, which was more like a hand cannon, and played with it for a while. With these items, they had more options in combat. Whether it was the bombs or the black steel pistol, they were small and did not affect carrying or switching use. Enemy would likely be caught off guard easily. After examining for a while, Jack peered down the gun and prepared to do something serious. He hesitated as he looked at RRHE battle armor placed in the corner of the room. His hesitation was whether to accumulate a few more days, save up 20 attribute points to strengthen Dragon Elephant power and break through the 3rd realm, or strengthen the defense of RHE battle armor first. But after only a brief hesitation, Jack's eyes became determined. Chapter 69. Enchantment. Translator. 549,690,339. With Jack Clark's current strength, he can even slay 3rd-layer heaven believers, and rely on more than 100 agility points to compete with 3rd-layer heaven renegade cultivators. Therefore, there is no urgent need for a major increase in combat power. Of course, these attribute points can't strengthen much either. On the other hand, he has always been a bit uneasy about defense. He is most afraid of being targeted by the rebel sniper rifles, especially anti-equipment weapons equipped with armor-piercing bullets that can shoot several times faster than the speed of sound and can penetrate steel plates 20 mm thick. If he is locked onto by his enemies during battle, even if he senses the danger in advance, he may not be able to react in time. The 2 battles he faced were not too bad. The enemies used rocket attacks with obvious weapons. With their speed, they didn't give the enemy a chance to fire a second shot. But what about next time? After all, these freshmen, are easily targeted at first. Thinking of this, Jack Clark placed his hand on the battle armor and said in his mind, consume 2 attribute points and strengthen the battle armor. As Jack Clark's voice fell, the remaining attribute points on the attribute page became 6, and at the same time, an invisible power enveloped the black-red armor. In silence, the armor seemed slightly darker. The armor didn't seem to have changed much, but when Jack Clark picked it up, he found that it had become more heavy, giving him a sense of solidity. Boom. Jack Clark tapped the armor with his fingers and made a dull sound. Just strengthening it by 2 points didn't make much of a difference. Jack Clark pondered for a moment, and continued the voice in his mind. Consume all attribute points, strengthen the battle armor. Buzz. After strengthening the armor by 6 attribute points at once, the air around the armor emitted a faint hum, and a faint gleam flashed across it. After this strengthening, the surface of the armor seemed slightly dull, giving people a profound feeling. In addition, the overall structure of the armor seemed to have undergone subtle changes. Fortunately, there was not much change in appearance, just a faint sense of oppression. This change seemed normal after being tempered by the battles and bloodshed of the past few days. As Jack Clark was looking at the strengthened armor, 2 rows of transparent text appeared in front of him. Made of ordinary alloy and soft steel wire, the current sturdy attribute of this full-body armor is +8, which is a normal transcendent item with decent defense. The surface alloy can withstand ordinary sniper bullets, the inner steel wire can stop armor-piercing bullets, and the helmet can withstand sniper armor-piercing bullet attacks. Note: due to material limitations, the maximum sturdiness attribute can be strengthened by EO points. To further improve the quality of the item, it can be infused with advanced materials. It unexpectedly became a transcendent item directly. Jack Clark showed a satisfied expression on his face. The effect after strengthening did not disappoint him. The body armor can now withstand sniper bullets, making him no longer worry about being targeted with sniper rifles. Moreover, this kind of strengthening is somewhat similar to enchanting, without making significant changes to the overall appearance. At this moment, Jack Clark glanced at the straight blade placed on the table and thoughtfully said, "The strengthening effect of the defense is so good, what about the blade?" The F-grade straight blade is known for its sturdiness, and its sharpness is not much different from ordinary steel blades. If the attribute points were used to strengthen it to the point of cutting iron like mud, a careless third-layer heaven cultivator might be cut in half together with their weapon. But after thinking about it for a moment, Jack Clark shook his head and put the thought behind him. It's still too early to consider these things. He should first increase his cultivation to the third-layer heaven, and by then, with the continuous enhancement of his constitution provided by the avatar, he would be among the strongest in the third-layer heaven. Next, Jack Clark sat cross-legged and began to practice dragon elephant power. After just performing 2 rotations of the cultivation methods, Jack Clark exclaimed in surprise, because he found that the cultivation effect here was much worse, and the concentration of transcendent energy between the heaven and earth was too low. If the concentration of transcendent energy in Mist River City was EO, it might only be 1 here. Jack Clark slowly opened his eyes, frowning. Is this the reason for the poor cultivation environment that Mr. Wellen mentioned? But the question is, why is the concentration of transcendent energy so low here on the same planet, while the concentration is so high in Eastern Summer? Jack Clark was somewhat puzzled for a moment. That's right. Jack suddenly thought of something, took out his mobile phone and opened the trial class group. Sure enough, he found that some classmates were discussing this issue as well. At the same time, the official solution had already been prepared. Lori Parma mentioned before they set off that he had issued a list of senior resources with unlocked permissions, which included an energy crystal that could only be exchanged at the 4th layer heaven. Unlike life crystals from mutated beasts that can strengthen the constitution, energy crystals are pure energy aggregates that come from special mineral veins. They contain pure energy that can be absorbed by cultivators to accelerate cultivation or quickly recover true strength, and have no other effects. However, due to its scarcity, this type of crystal is a strategic resource and can only be exchanged by those who are officially recognized and have reached the 4th layer heaven. Moreover, the officials were quite generous this time, as the energy crystals, which originally cost 15 contribution points, could be exchanged for just 5 points, equivalent to a 30% discount. Besides, considering that these freshmen have not yet earned enough contribution points, they could even buy on credit. However, each person could only exchange for 2 crystals a month, and any excess would be normal price. Under normal circumstances, a 2nd layer heaven cultivator wouldn't use up the energy of a single crystal in a month. Added Nobleman at. Having read the information about the energy crystals, Jack flipped through the list again and even saw giant beast essence and blood, but the contribution points required for the exchange were too high. Moreover, for him, no cultivation resources could compare to the attribute points converted from life crystals. About half an hour later, Jack put down his phone and planned to go to the logistics department for an energy crystal on credit after dinner. Seeing that it was still early, Jack sank his consciousness and arrived at the heavy armored beast's location. At the bottom of the river where it flows into the sea, a black, ferocious unique beast slowly lifted its head from the muddy sand, using its limbs to stir up the rolling mud. As a month passed, the heavy armored beast's body became increasingly ferocious and thick, with stout and sharp limbs, appearing like a heavily armored lizard or crocodile from afar. Also, as it continued to slaughter, an aura of violence and tyranny gradually enveloped its body, scaring away many small fish and shrimp that approached it. For instance, now, as the heavy armored beast passed by, 2 meters long, small fishes were suddenly frightened, instantly swimming out more than 10 meters away with a flick of their tails. Fortunately, the heavy armored beast disdained eating these common fish, and with a cold glance, continued searching for those mutated ferocious fish. In the evening, a sweaty Justin Wellen opened the door to his room and saw Jack sitting in front of the window. Thinking he was cultivating, he shouted, "Jack, let's go eat. Is it time to eat already?" Jack slowly opened his eyes. The two went to the 3rd-floor restaurant one after another, and Jack found that his classmates were also covered in sweat, as if they had gone through a fierce battle. After getting their food, Jack sat down with his tray and asked curiously, "What were you guys practicing this afternoon? You all look like you've been fighting for 3 days and nights. The concentration of extraordinary energy here is too low, and it's too slow to improve by meditating." Justin Wellen ate big mouthfuls, his voice muffled, so we spent the afternoon competing against each other, increasing our combat experience. We fought all afternoon. It seemed that everyone was the same. Justin suddenly said, "By the way, Jack, you've seen the resource list on the trial group chat, right? Like energy crystals that can speed up our cultivation." "I've seen it," Jack said as he took a bite of ordinary mutated beast meat. Justin nodded. "I've seen it, that's good. But I don't recommend you exchange for it." "Why?" Jack paused his hand. Justin mysteriously whispered, "Just trust me. Eat up, and I'll show you something good when we get back." "What's the good thing?" "You'll know soon. Don't worry, brother, I won't cheat you." "All right then." Quote. Chapter 70. Innate Desire. Translator. 549,690,339. Hee. I'm well prepared for this trial. In the room, Justin Wellen confidently unzipped his backpack and dug his hand inside, pulling out a fist-sized blue crystal. "Here, Jack, catch." Justin tossed the crystal to Jack Clark. "What is this?" As soon as Jack caught the blue crystal, he felt a pure energy flowing within it, so rich that it was almost tangible. However, unlike the life crystal, the attribute page had no reaction to this item. Jack looked at Justin's backpack. "Is this the good stuff you mentioned when you set off?" "Yep. At Nobleman at." Justin grinned. "My brother sent me a few blue crystals after learning that one was coming here for the trial. This is a better resource than the energy crystal body. The energy contained within is more pure and abundant. Generally, only 6th layer heaven cultivators use it. You should know that as 2nd layer cultivators, our true strength is weak, and our refining speed is slow. When we introduce the crystal's energy into our bodies, about 60% will evaporate and dissipate. That's why officials restrict low-level cultivators from using it, because it's too wasteful." Jack asked curiously, "So isn't using blue crystals for cultivation even more wasteful for you?" Justin nodded. "Under normal conditions, that would be true. That's why my brother coated these blue crystals with a special substance. This substance acts like an insulator, preventing the flow of energy and only leaving a tiny, nearly undetectable hole, which is this white dot. With this setup, we won't draw out too much energy during cultivation, and the waste rate can be maintained at around 30%, which is way more cost-effective than exchanging energy crystal bodies. On top of that, my brother also got me a special resource that can change my physique. As soon as one absorb it, my fighting power will skyrocket." Hee. Jack, one wasn't joking with you. This trial is the beginning of me, Justin Wellen, dominating the world. Even Jack couldn't help but be envious at this moment. Look at that. This was the proper way for a 2nd-generation successor, leaving for a trial well prepared with full sets of resources. Such treatment. It's just too enviable. With a sigh, Jack casually threw the blue crystal back to Justin. Justin quickly caught the blue crystal and looked at Jack puzzledly. "Jack, what are you doing?" "That's for you." "For me?" "No, you keep it, it's too valuable." Jack was surprised, and immediately shook his head in refusal. A regular crystal at a 30% discount would cost 5 points. A blue crystal would cost at least 30 or 40 points each. Although they had a good relationship, Jack felt that it wasn't quite at that level yet. Justin nonchalantly said, "My brother gave me several of these blue crystals. One is enough for me to cultivate for 2 months. I can't use them all. Besides, we've gone through a lot together, and we're good brothers." "What's a single energy crystal body?" Justin forcibly shoved the blue crystal into Jack's hand. Looking at the valuable blue crystal in his hand, Jack bitterly smiled. "Justin, your generosity is putting me in a tough spot. After all, we're just classmates. Jack, you should know that this kind of resource doesn't mean much to me, but it's important for you right now, so there's no need to refuse. You should save your contribution points to exchange for the necessary matching resources, maximizing your results. I consider you a brother. Since the first day of school, one felt a strong connection with you." Justin said seriously, "My brother used to say that if you meet a like-minded classmate in high school, you should sincerely become friends because that person might become a brother you can trust to have your back. The path of cultivation is long and arduous, and no one can guarantee smooth sailing. Having one or two or a few brothers to support each other makes the journey easier and less lonely. So if you regard me as a brother, just accept it. When you make it big, just remember to leave a share for me. Although, one feel that possibility is slim since I'm about to take off. Justin finished speaking, and then chuckled. His words left Jack slightly speechless, and in the end, Jack nodded and accepted the blue crystal. If he kept refusing, it would seem insincere, so he could find another way to repay Justin later. That's more like it. We're all men, let's keep it simple. Justin laughed when he saw Jack accept the blue crystal, then continued explaining. Actually, if it weren't for attending this Koroya trial, my brother wouldn't have given me these advanced resources, and the official wouldn't have released the energy crystal bodies. It's because our body strength is not enough. We can't digest these high purity energies. But we have experienced 2 battles in the past 2 days. When faced with life-threatening situations, our body's genes will instinctively release information to become stronger. Jack Clark narrowed his eyes. So, what Matt Watkins mentioned, the potential stimulation. Exactly. In order to survive, both the body and the subconscious will desire to become stronger, absorbing all the energy and resources that are beneficial to oneself to the extreme. Under such circumstances, as long as energy can keep up, our cultivation speed will be faster than during our time at school. This is also why the school requires all students to participate in mutated beast trials after their sophomore year, but we just got ahead this time. Of course, there are advantages and disadvantages in this situation. For example, we just broke through to the 2nd layer heaven, and maybe we will die at the hands of advanced cultivators tomorrow. So, Jack, work hard to become stronger. After reminding Jack Clark, Justin Wellen took out another blue crystal and a yellow crystal from his bag. Holding one in each hand, he sat on the bed and started to cultivate with great effort. That's the advantage of having high-level cultivators at home. Jack felt a bit envious. Justin Wellen once mentioned that his brother was a high-level cultivator. According to the division of high-level cultivators with 4th, 5th, and 6th layer heaven, his brother's strength should be at least above the 7th layer heaven. In this case, not to mention resources, but even some of the cultivation experience would be much more advantageous than Jack, who was just an ordinary person, making their path of cultivation smoother. Of course, Jack didn't feel jealous. After all, it was what they deserved. Just like his own family, when he becomes a high-level cultivator in a few years, when Glenn Clark enters high school, he will prepare everything for Glenn too. Moreover, Jack felt that it's not just Justin Wellen, but Mandy Leinster, Crystal Leinster, and Matt Watkins must have been prepared for the trial as well. Only those from ordinary families, like him, would be completely ignorant of the truth about this trial and unprepared. Or even if he knew all this, he wouldn't be able to prepare anything. There's just no way to do it. His family is neither rich nor well connected. As for why the school teachers didn't tell them this, it's unnecessary. After experiencing 2 battles, anyone would strive hard to cultivate. There is no need for reminders since auxiliary cultivation energy crystals can be obtained on credit beforehand, with no delays. Feeling emotional, Jack also sat cross-legged, holding the blue crystal and began cultivating. Boom. The moment Jack started to use the dragon elephant power, he felt a vast amount of energy inside the blue crystal being disturbed, wanting to rush out crazily. Then, just as Justin Wellen said, the solid coating blocked that energy, leaving only a tiny, almost invisible, hole for the energy to pass through. Under the suction force of the dragon elephant power, a strand of tiny but pure energy flowed into Jack's body. When it touched his true strength, it instantly exploded, and the dense energy spread and filled his entire body. Gasping. The energy was too dense. Jack felt that with each breath he took, his true strength grew a little more. The true strength circulation had an enhanced effect on strengthening his physique, and all his muscles and bones were more eager than ever to absorb energy at a speed several times faster than before. At this rate, Jack felt that he might be able to break through to the 3rd layer heaven in just 4 to 5 months instead of over a year under normal conditions, even without using attribute points. Moreover, this was just for him, whose talent was average. It might be even faster for geniuses. But he cannot refine it all at once. Jack crazily operated his dragon elephant power, trying to refine all the energy inside his body. However, just as Justin Wellen said, their true strength was weak, and much of the heavenly energy in their bodies could not be refined in time. This energy overflowed from the body and then dissipated into the air. At this moment, Jack, who had never experienced such a wealthy battle before, felt extremely distressed, as it was too wasteful. This time, he cultivated for almost 3 hours until his spirit felt tired. Then, he and Justin Wellen took turns taking baths and went to rest early. In the middle of the night, Jack woke up on time, and his consciousness plunged into the heavy armored beast. He slowly crawled out of the cave and entered the river to look for a midnight snack. Chapter 71. The Dead. Translator. 549,690,339. The next morning, more than 20 freshmen wore black-red armor and gathered outside the hotel with all sorts of exaggeratedly shaped weapons on their backs. They all had a high-power pistol strapped around their waists and 9 differently shaped metal bombs hanging behind them, fully armed and exuding a killing aura. As for the student who was injured by the grenade, he was still in the medical room for recovery, expected to stay there for a week. Soon, each team assigned an off-road vehicle with no roof to pick them up, and they all hopped on agilely. Wearing the battle armor, their bodies were already bulky, not to mention the 2 meters long weapons they carried. They couldn't even fit into a car with a roof. Standing on the off-road vehicle, Justin Wellen, who was holding a heavy shield, suddenly asked curiously, "Jack, why does your battle armor look better than ours?" Jack's enhanced +8 armor was relatively darker compared to the other students, giving a sense of heaviness overall. Zach Lyons and White Veil also noticed this and showed confusion in their eyes. Facing this question, Jack smirked slightly, "Because I sprayed a matte film on the armor." "How about it? Doesn't it look much cooler than yours now?" The armor's color change was a simple issue, and he casually found a spray paint excuse. To hide the truth more convincingly, Jack had actually gone to the logistics department early in the morning to ask for a can of matte spray paint. "Damn, bro, you're a genius. Why didn't one think of that?" Zach, who already had a carefree personality, beamed with excitement. "After today's mission, I'll go get a can of spray paint and turn my armor gold, haha." White Veil was excited too. "Gold's too tacky. One thinks silver is cooler." Justin Wellen chimed in enthusiastically. No, your ideas are too monotonous. One think adding a pair of metal wings on the back would be cooler." "No, are your imaginations getting a little too wild?" Jack had a strange feeling that the upcoming test might take a weird turn. A few minutes later, Jack and his 3 friends met up with the squad of the armored team. However, today's patrol area was further away, closer to the suburbs. As tanks and armored cars rumbled into the areas with dilapidated roads and worn-down houses, pedestrians and motorcycles quickly made way. None of the better cars, e.g., sedans, were in sight, which made Jack feel as if he were in a third-world country, a stark contrast to the prosperity of eastern summer. On both sides of the road, the Koroyan civilians watched the armored squad pass with awe. Bender. This situation gave Jack a feeling that they were the villains, strutting with cannons and rifles in the underdeveloped Koroya. Cough. How could that be possible? They were Federation special soldiers here to suppress the evil god sect. Jack's eyes narrowed slightly in the vehicle as he seemed to be resting his eyes. In reality, he had entered the heart's eye state to sense his surroundings with his 6th sense. In this state, as long as there was a hostile gaze on him, he could sense it immediately. However, no enemies appeared until the armored team passed through this area. At that moment, Carl Raven in the leading tank received a command. "All vehicles, be alert. The 5th team is ambushed and surrounded by a large number of enemies. Come with me for immediate support." With the announcement on the walkie-talkie, the leading tank roared as it turned its head, and its speed instantly soared to 80 yards, stirring up billows of smoke and dust on the already dilapidated road. Jack and his friends were also invigorated and stood up quickly, for enemies meant income. The 5th team's patrol area was adjacent to Jack's, so it took them less than 10 minutes to see the flames and hear the explosions and gunfire in the distance. This was already a suburban area, and up ahead was a relocated and uninhabited urban village. At the moment, more than 200 rebels were relying on buildings and traps, trapping the 5th Armored Team at the street entrance. 2 tanks had already lost their mobility, and several armored cars were overturned due to explosions. As for the accompanying freshmen, one of them lay motionless on the ground, while another was heavily injured and rescued by soldiers who struggled to push him onto an armored car. "All tanks, follow my lead and prepare to assault the enemy's vantage point from the front. Spread out the armored vehicles and encircle them from both directions. Heavy machine guns and mobile phones, spare no ammunition, and provide cover fire for teammates to counterattack. But be careful, there may be several cultivators among the rebels, so don't get too close. Lane just a blink of an eye." Carl Raven instructed the armored squad to attack, and then Jack Clark heard his voice through the earpiece. "Jack, the 5th squad has been ambushed. One of your classmates died on the spot and one was seriously injured. The injured student is being treated now. Two other students chased three cultists deep into the east of the urban village and their current situation is unknown. I suggest you go and provide support first. What? Someone died. Hearing that a classmate had died, Zach Lyons and the White Veil members all changed their expressions slightly, and so did Justin Wellen and Jack Clark. Although they knew there was some danger in this trial, they didn't expect anyone to die on the second day. Weren't their teachers or military experts following them? However, now is not the time to think about these things. Jack Clark said in a deep voice. No need, 1'11" go alone to provide support. Mr. Willard, Zach, you cooperate with 2nd Lieutenant Carl and make sure to annihilate these rebels. Including the cultivators within the rebels, if there are any at the third layer heaven, encircle and delay them. They had already witnessed Jack Clark's strength in the past 2 days. 3 second layer heaven cultists were nothing to fear, and even if he encountered third layer heaven opponents, he could safely retreat. Hence, Justin Wellen and the others nodded and said solemnly, leave it to us. With their strength, under Carl Raven's firepower suppression, once they charged into the crowd, it would be a total massacre. Although a killer is always killed, the death of their classmate filled their hearts with killing intent. Jack Clark's figure flashed as he jumped off the vehicle. With a burst of full strength, he turned into a black shadow that disappeared on the spot, and in the blink of an eye, he rushed out hundreds of meters. Zach Lyons was shocked. Damn, Jack's speed is so fast. That's right, my brother is very powerful. Justin Wellen said with pride, then jumped off the car with his heavy shield, and the heavy, domineering aura erupted from him. Seeing this, Zach Lyons and the White Veil members didn't hesitate, and the three teamed up. Under the cover of heavy firepower from the tanks and armored cars, they took advantage of the terrain and charged from the side. Still far away, 3 metal bombs whistled past, accurately landing behind several rebel positions. Boom boom boom. In an instant, there were explosions and screams. For Justin Wellen and the others, whose physiques were more than 10 times that of an ordinary person and had cultivated true martial, throwing bombs was a piece of cake and didn't require any special training. Boom boom. At this moment, 2 tank roars sounded, and the shells accurately collapsed 2 two-story buildings. More than a dozen fierce rebels were directly buried. At Nobleman at. Whoosh. A raging wind whistled by Jack Clark's ears as the surrounding scenery frantically receded. His figure dashed like the wind through the rundown buildings, and soon found the bodies of 3 cultists along the traces of battle. Following the signs of battle, he quickly located the 2 classmates. Under the abandoned elementary school teaching building, Marcus Lee, wearing battle armor and wielding a 2-meter-long heavy hammer, smashed 2 opponents from the evil god sect and forced them to retreat continuously. Bang! The heavy hammer weighing hundreds of kilograms smashed into the wall, creating a large hole in an instant. Amid the smoke and dust, the heavy hammer swung, shattering the chair thrown by the enemy. At this moment, Marcus Lee was imposing, pressing the 2 late second layer heaven cultists. Not far away, on the playground, there were 3 unrecognizable bloody corpses, and in a more distant corner, a student in battle armor leaned against the wall, breathing weakly. There was a large blood hole in his thigh. Thud. Jack Clark's figure fell from the wall with a heavy thud of his metal battle boots hitting the ground. The injured classmate's face changed suddenly. Be careful, there's a sniper on the roof. In the instant the classmate spoke, Jack Clark had already moved several meters away in a flash. At the same time, he faintly heard the sound of a silenced gunshot, and the place where he was just standing exploded with a bang, leaving a head-sized hole. Bang bang bang. Jack Clark dodged 3 consecutive shots in advance. His figure was like a ghost, and within a few flashes, he entered the school stairwell. Chapter 72. Slaying the Triplex. Translator. 549,690,339. Heavy footsteps swiftly passed through the stairway, and Jack Clark almost jumped several meters with one step. His figure flashed across each floor, reaching the 6th floor rooftop entrance in seconds. Bang! With a kick from Jack Clark, the iron door of the rooftop flew off horizontally. However, he didn't rush out but immediately crouched close to the wall. On the distant rooftop, a man in black tight-fitting clothes held a crude sniper rifle, his eyes sharp. As the iron door was kicked off, he fired 3 consecutive shots in an instant. Bang bang bang. Bullets pierced through the doorway, blasting 3 large penetrating holes in the concrete wall, but at the same time, he also revealed his position. Two black objects flashed by, and the man in black observed a slight change in his expression. He hurriedly dodged to the side while a late-stage third-layer heaven red true power burst from him. Boom boom. Two impact-triggered concussion bombs exploded upon landing, engulfing a range of over 10 meters in searing flames. Powerful shockwaves blasted through the floors, scattering countless debris. At the same time, Jack's figure burst out from the doorway in the instant the metal bombs exploded. His whole body exuded an overbearing aura as he charged toward the edge of the explosion. The man dressed in black had blood-colored true power circulating around him, his face pale. Bender. It seemed like although he had escaped from the center of the explosion at the first moment, he was still injured by the impact of the blast. Bang. The long knife unleashed a raging wind with a whistling sound, its sharp edge causing the man in black to change his expression. A bloody light surged over his 2-meter-long sniper rifle. Bang. The sharp blade collided with the blood-covered rifle, and in an instant, a tangible force exploded, forming shockwaves and unyielding winds. Thud. At Novelban at. Hitting the ground with a dull noise, Jack landed and stood with his knife, his icy gaze fixed on the cold man 2 meters away as he said calmly. I didn't expect the person hiding in the shadows and shooting to be a third-layer heaven cultivator. You're truly a group of rats hiding in the gutter. In response to Jack's mockery, the arrogant Boris sneered, for us cultivators, the means are not important, as long as we can kill people. Then Boris menacingly continued, worthy of being the Federation's genius, not running away upon encountering me at the early stage of the second-layer heaven. You have quite the guts. Soon, 1'11" break your limbs, skin you, pull your tendons, and throw you into an ant nest, where countless ants will feast on your flesh and pick your bones clean. You'll regret coming here. Jack was unmoved by his threat, his eyes even revealing a faint excitement. As his strength attribute approached 150 points, his arm strength increased to 1200 kg, far surpassing the 800 kg limit of the second-layer heaven. Furthermore, with the breakthrough of the dragon elephant power and the mind's eye bright knife to the second layer, his agility and physique surpassed 100 points, significantly outperforming second-layer heaven cultivators. Under such circumstances, second-layer heaven cultists and cultivators would barely pose a threat to him, providing no sense of oppression. Of course, Jack wasn't a fool. If he encountered a late-stage third-layer heaven cultivator, he would simply turn and run. Third-layer heaven cultivators have shifted their focus to true strength, with body strengthening being secondary. Moreover, the standard for the third-layer heaven is having the illusory true strength fill the dantian to reach a foggy state. Under these conditions, true strength provides a stronger enhancement in various aspects and can coat the body and weapons to increase defense and damage. However, that referred to normal third-layer heaven cultivators. In the first strike just now, Jack had roughly estimated the strength of the evil god sect cultist before him. His physical strength was only equivalent to that of a second-layer heaven, while his true strength was in the third-layer heaven, but lacking solidity. As long as his true strength was exhausted, a single slash would be enough to kill him. So, Jack took a deep breath, instantly releasing all his true strength within his body. His muscles swelled up, dragon elephant patterns surfaced on his skin, and his entire body exuded a wild aura, like an enraged giant elephant. Especially his arms, under the effect of the Light King knife, showed bulging veins, resembling two stout elephant legs that radiated an oppressing atmosphere. Kill. With a low shout, the ground trembled. Jack instantly unleashed the Light King's fury, transforming into a residual shadow and charged toward Boris amidst a howling gale. Courting death. Feeling underestimated, Boris was completely enraged. His entire body, including the unique sniper rifle in his hand, was covered with red true power, and he fired a shot at Jack Clark. Bang! At close range, the bullet missed Jack Clark. Just before Boris fired, Jack had already crouched down and dodged the bullet. A pitiless knife light that looked like a pyrophing sliced the air from bottom to top. Clang! The blade light was as fast as lightning, striking Boris's sniper rifle, which he had blocked his chest with. The rifle, covered with true power, was extremely hard, and only produced sparks. However, Boris's face changed in response to the mountain-like and tsunami-like terrifying force, as he was slashed and sent flying by the overbearing power, crashing into the wall several meters away with a bang. At that moment, the blade light slashed down again, cutting through the air and hitting the wall just as Boris rolled out of the way. Half of the wall collapsed with a loud bang from Jack's single blow. Whoosh! A gust of wind roared behind Jack Clark, who turned around and clenched his left fist, a punch like a cannonball. Boom! The battle armor-covered fist and the red palm collided, causing a violent explosive burst of air. Just as their fists and palms touched, Jack's dragon elephant true strength was shattered by the third layer heaven's blood red true power. However, Boris wasn't happy at all. He could only feel a sheer overbearing and horrifying force surging through his palm, shaking his blood red true power. The overbearing punch sent him retreating several steps back. Take advantage when they are sick. As Boris was retreating from the punch, Jack was already pouncing on him, his straight blade slashing out with terrifying blade lights that engulfed him. Boris's face changed slightly, and he hurriedly held up his true power-covered sniper rifle to block his body. Boom, 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 boom. Under Jack's full strength, he was like a mad elephant, his blade lights as fast as lightning, giving Boris no chance to dodge or counterattack. The impact force carried by each slash was extremely terrifying. Each slash would cause Boris to retreat several steps under the force of the terrifying power, his body covered red true power constantly shaking and eventually dimming. After 15 consecutive slashes, Jack finally stopped and slowly sheathed his knife. In front of him, Boris's hands were bloody and mangled, desperately gripping the broken sniper rifle, his chest caved in, and blood slowly flowing out of his eyes, ears, mouth, and nose. In his eyes, there was a strong unwillingness. He never thought that one day he would be killed by a second-layer cultivator with such overbearing and unmatched power. Die for me. At that moment, Marcus Lee's angry roar rang out from below, holding his heavy hammer with power that had been built up to the limit. Boom, boom. With the classroom walls collapsing, the two evil god sect followers, who had been barely holding on for a long time, were instantly smashed into pulp by Marcus Lee. Ah! Marcus Lee, holding his heavy hammer and shouting in anger, had just wiped out all the enemies. He had watched helplessly as his classmates were killed in a sneak attack. This anger and the fear of being so close to death made him want to vent in an all-out way, killing all the enemies. No one had expected that the evil god sect followers would be so fearless of death. Not only did they bury countless explosives and landmines along the way, they even strapped bombs to themselves and ambushed the armored squad, catching everyone off guard and exploding them. Add in the ambusher with the anti-equipment sniper rifle. Thud. Jack Clark jumped down from the building using leverage and landed outside the classroom. Jack Clark. Seeing his acquaintance, Marcus Lee's anger eased slightly. Jack Clark said solemnly, "The sniper has been killed by me, there are no other enemies around. You take the injured classmate and follow me from behind, I'll go back to support." All right. Marcus Lee nodded. Chapter 73. Source Pollution. Translator. 549,690,339. Jack Clark's figure shot through the dilapidated buildings at a fast speed, covering tens of meters in a second, and quickly crossed half of the urban village to return to RHE front battlefield. However, the battle here is already nearing its end. Buildings were collapsed by RHE heavy artillery of tanks, and there were huge bullet holes left by the machine gun fire everywhere, and the ground was filled with bloodied rebels' corpses. This time, almost half of the urban village was affected by the battle, and many buildings were ignited by the artillery fire, with billowing black smoke rising under the burning flames, and the air was filled with the smell of gunpowder. Luckily, this place has already been abandoned. Boom. At this moment, the roar of a distant tank echoed, and a shell fell on a group of rebels hiding on the rooftop, with the explosion's fire engulfing the entire building. By this time, some soldiers have already come down from the armored cars, compressing the battlefield by dividing into small teams and surrounding the remaining rebels who were resisting by relying on a few small buildings. As for Justin Wellen and the other two, they were standing next to a half-collapsed building, panting, their battle armors dyed red with blood, and their bodies radiating a strong smell of blood. In addition to them, there was also an armored convoy that came to support, which was also the reason why the rebels were wiped out so quickly. Howard Lee, who looked as mighty as a giant, slowly picked up his iron column, and in front of him, an off-road vehicle trying to flee was directly crushed. The rebels inside had already turned into a mass of flesh and blood, unrecognizable. Jack Clark's figure flashed and landed in front of Justin Wellen and the others. "Mr. Willard, are you guys okay?" "I'm fine. I had a great time killing." "Jack, you didn't see me when I was holding the heavy machine gun and sweeping the area with it. I was so cool," Justin Wellen said excitedly. However, his heavy shield was now full of potholes, many of the sharp edges were broken, and many parts were embedded with deformed bullets halfway in. There was even a trace of a hand grenade explosion on it. Zach Lyons grinned, showing an effort to wave his hand. "One won't die either." His chest was covered with several small dents where the alloy had been punched in, probably by being shot by high-powered bullets. Although the bullets did not penetrate the alloy, the impact still made him cough up blood uncomfortably, feeling like his ribs were broken. White Veil was in better shape among the three, practicing a speed-based cultivation methods and matching swordsmanship. Although looking a bit embarrassed, his demeanor was somewhat relaxed. Jack, what's the situation on your side? Justin Wellen asked. It's all right. Marcus Lee is fine. Jack Clark nodded. Another classmate was shot in the thigh by a sniper rifle, but there was no life-threatening danger. As for the sniper who attempted to assassinate from the dark, I killed him. Zach Lyons frowned. These evil god sect guys and those rebels really don't fear death. Added Nobleman at. White Veil shook his head. It's not that they don't fear death, but their thinking is influenced or polluted by the existence of RHE source after practicing the quick success methods of RHE evil god sect. Including those rebels who cooperated with the evil god sect, many people's thinking might have been unconsciously influenced, otherwise they wouldn't be so crazy. Their thinking can be influenced by the source. The evil god sect's cultivation methods are so scary. Jack Clark was somewhat surprised. White Veil bitter smiled. I was also shocked when one first heard about it, but this is the terrifying aspect of the evil god sect. Their cultivation methods are different from the true martial ones we practice. Or to say that those cultivation methods are not meant for humans to practice at all, it's very strange. As they spoke, the four walked towards the armored convoy in the back. On their way passing an overturned armored car, although the soldiers inside had already evacuated. Jack Clark and Justin Wellen, White Veil, still joined forces to flip it back over. However, when they saw the half-charred corpse of their classmate with a bloody hole in his chest shot through by an anti-equipment sniper rifle, the four fell silent. He didn't expect anyone to die in battle just after 2 days, and the two under the circumstances where there was an expert secretly following behind. At this moment, Jack Clark was very grateful that he prioritized strengthening defense, although he had dodged those sniper bullets in advance. But there's a huge difference in the concept of not being able to block and being able to block but dodging the attack anyway. In a short while, Howard Lee, carrying an iron column, and RHE other 3 students came over as well. Following them, Lori Parma and female teacher Sylvia Lyons and another military expert, who were as fast as ghosts, jumping over from the buildings in a few leaps. Thump. The military expert casually threw down the 2 cultist corpses in his hand. In Lori Parma's hand, she held a heavily injured fanatic who had been knocked unconscious. Lori Parma fell silent for a moment before speaking in a solemn voice. Since you've chosen the battlefield, you're no longer just students, you are soldiers. Death and injuries are inevitable. He died fighting against the evil god sect. The school and officials will ensure that. His family is well compensated. But his death won't be in vain. One assure you, the evil god sect and the rebels will soon pay for this classmate's demise. A student had died on the morning patrol, a piece of news that caused a huge stir among the new freshmen. On the way back, when Justin Wellen and RHE others learned that the sniper Jack Clark had killed was a 3rd-layer heaven cultivator, they were somewhat surprised. Although cultists of the same level were slightly weaker than normal cultivators, a 3rd-layer heaven cultivator still held a significant advantage over a 2nd-layer heaven cultivator. Don't look at me like that. Jack Clark spread his hands. Mainly, that cultist was quite weak, and one had first hit him with a concussion bomb, which allowed me to kill him by sheer luck. Think about it. If that guy were very strong, would he need to hide with a sniper rifle for sneak attacks? That makes sense. Zach Lyons nodded, agreeing with this explanation. However, while Zach and the others believed him, Justin Wellen couldn't help but feel suspicious, as he found Jack's tone to be rather familiar. Jack initially thought that his classmates would be on edge for a few days, but to his surprise, Justin and Zach hurried off to the logistics department the moment they returned to the hotel. One of them wanted to add color to their battle armor, while the other decided to add wings to his. It seems everyone is adapting quite well, Jack mused as he came to the underground logistics department once again to manage his resources. Today, he had killed a 3rd-layer heaven cultivator, which was worth EO contribution points. Adding this to the 1 point he had left over from yesterday, he now had a total of 11 contribution points. Jack spent 8 points and exchanged them for 2 level 1 life crystals. This time, however, his luck was poor, and one of the crystals had a meager amount of energy. Upon converting it, Jack only gained 6 points attribute, at which he could only shake his head in speechlessness. Back in his hotel room, Jack immediately chose to strengthen his battle armor by consuming 2 points attribute. As Jack spoke, An invisible power enveloped the black-red armor he had yet to remove, causing the color to deepen slightly. The helmet felt slightly heavier now. And the armor's attribute was now I:*EOI. During today's rescue mission, when he was under sniper fire from the rooftop, Jack had only dodged 2 bullets. The third sniper bullet had grazed the side of his shoulder. There was no choice. The sniper bullet was just too fast. Even though his heart's eye had sensed danger in advance, it didn't mean he could avoid all the bullets. If he had worn normal armor, the sniper bullet would have easily torn through the alloy, leaving a severe injury on one side of his shoulder. But against the Solidity +8 strengthened heavy shoulder plating, the bullet could only produce a shower of sparks before brushing past, its kinetic energy completely ignored by Jack. Today's battle made Jack realize once more the importance of defense. As a result, when he returned, he decided to strengthen his battle armor to its current limit without a second thought. With Solidity +EO, the alloy armor covering Jack's entire body could now withstand sniper armor-piercing bullets, ensuring that he no longer had to worry about ambushes from hidden snipers. Jack glanced at his remaining 4 points attribute and suppressed the urge to strengthen his weapon. In the afternoon, as Jack practiced dragon elephant power in his room, he partially focused his attention on the heavy armored beast. The now over 2-meter tall black unique beast became even more menacing. Although its body wasn't very large, it had already become the dominant force in this estuary. An invisible killing intent filled the area wherever it went, terrifying the ordinary small fish and shrimp, causing them to flee in a hurry. All mutated fish that entered the range of its waters became prey to the heavy armored beast, even those large fish that were twice as big as itself. As time went by, with continuous growth and devouring, the heavy armored beast's evolution value had accumulated to over 200. It was expected that it would undergo its third evolution in about half a month. Chapter 74. Wings. Translator. 549,690,339. In the afternoon, as Jack Clark was controlling the heavy armored beast to eat and drink enough, Justin Wellen excitedly ran back in, shouting at the door, "Jack, look at me. Don't I look cool?" On the balcony, Jack Clark slowly opened his eyes. "What's cool? You really did add wings." Justin Wellen was wearing a clean black-red battle armor, and behind him were a pair of metal-made black folding wings that covered half of his body, making him look very imposing. But, did it have to be so flashy? Jack was a bit confused, thinking the others were just making empty talk. Justin Wellen walked up proudly and even spun around in front of Jack. "Hee, does it look imposing now?" At Nobleman at. Jack was speechless. "Imposing, yes, but these wings alone must weigh at least 20 or 30 kilograms, right? Along with the weight of the armor, don't you feel it's heavy when you run? Plus his heavy weapon, 100 or nearly 200 kilogram shield, his total weight reached over 200 kilograms. Running away from enemies during a battle would be nearly impossible. It's a bit heavy, but it adds safety," Justin Wellen said proudly. "My weapon is an alloy heavy shield, and one take a frontal assault approach in battle. Even sniper armor-piercing bullets can't penetrate my shield, but the back is vulnerable. Now that I have these metal wings in the back, it's like adding another layer of defense, and I even paid extra for the military factory to use thicker alloy. In this case, even if I'm shot from behind with a sniper rifle, it won't penetrate my armor. How about that? Am I smart?" Jack nodded in admiration. "Indeed, you're smart. What about Zach Lyons? Did he also add wings?" "No. His cultivation methods are different from mine. If the load is too high, it affects agility. So, he only doubled the armor on the front and back and added some glittering gold plates. It's not just us. Many of our classmates have gone to the base factory to reinforce their armors, even at the cost of some speed." At this time, Justin Wellen suggested, "Jack, I recommend you add some reinforcement to the front and back of your armor to protect against hidden snipers. I thought the death of that student wouldn't affect us much, but it seems everyone has noticed the defense issue. I noticed this issue early on, but I don't need it. Overly heavy armor will affect my speed," Jack continued. "Don't forget, what sword skill am I cultivating? As long as there are hostile gazes on me, I will sense them. Sniper rifles aren't a big threat to me." Justin was stunned and then reacted. "I almost forgot. Jack, you're cultivating the mind's eye bright knife and have really reached the heart's eye realm." Talking about this, he couldn't help but show a look of envy on his face. He had also heard of the mind's eye bright knife, and was very interested in the heart's eye realm, which could sense danger in advance. Unfortunately, his brother had told him that he didn't have that talent. Ordinary people couldn't cultivate that sword skill, and even if they tried, they could only learn the ordinary Light King knife, unable to enter the Heart's Eye realm. Jack, do you want to cultivate with me at the base cultivation ground? Jack shook his head. No need, one like to cultivate quietly by myself. All right, Justin nodded. In the conference room, General Laird Hawk sat in the main seat, flanked by his staff, adjutants, several colonel-ranked military experts, and Lori Parma. Laird Hawk said gravely, "Today, a genius and 5 soldiers died in a rebel ambush, and I'm deeply regretful. However, it's their sacrifice that has allowed us to capture a high-ranking fanatic. Through my secret skill, I've interrogated and locked in on the main base of the fleeing evil god sect and the remaining main force of the rebels. Right now, 3 special reconnaissance teams have already set out and are expected to arrive at the outskirts of the mountain range in 2 hours, closely monitoring with satellites. I'm issuing the combat mission now. At 9 o'clock tonight, the 3rd and 5th Armored Brigades will be ready to depart, and they must arrive at the combat location within 2 hours. After nightfall, the 15th Long-Range Rocket Artillery Regiment will set off to the designated combat location and cooperate with the supporting air bombing squadron for saturation bombing. As for those evil god sect experts hiding in the mountain belly, one will request a bomber carrying fusion energy for energy cannon bombardment to destroy the mountain peak along with them. Also, after 6 p.m., there will be a citywide electronics silence. Before dinner, everyone received a command not to sleep tonight, as there would be action, and then their mobile phones lost signal. Justin was excited. Jack, do you remember the fanatic Mr. Perry caught? There must be a big operation tonight. This time I must kill more cultists. Jack squinted his eyes and reminded. Be careful then. Safety first, killing the enemy second. At 10 o'clock that night, the hotel lobby was brightly lit. All 25 students gathered one after another. However, the atmosphere that was supposed to be solemn and murderous had turned a bit strange. Zach Lyons, in his glittering golden armor, looked as dazzling as a comic book superhero. He walked around, showing off. A classmate couldn't help but envy. Zach, where did you get those golden paints? They look like gold. Hee hee, I paid a big price for someone to tune this paint for me. They guaranteed it's waterproof, wear resistant, and won't fade for a year, Zach said proudly. Zach, aren't you afraid you'll be targeted by the enemy, glittering like that in the night? Afraid. I could lose my life, but coolness is a lifelong affair. Justin, your wings are not up to date. They're too outdated. Look at me, I have 3 pairs of white angel wings, and they can be opened and closed. White Veil proudly showed off his silver battle armor in front of Justin, and behind his back were 3 sets of wings of different sizes, slowly opening and closing under the control of mechanical devices. Compared to White Veil's armor, Justin's black wings were a bit ordinary and lacked extravagance, but it had better protection because of their thickness. Besides them, the armor of most of the students had undergone more or less changes. Some had thickened armor on the front and back, protecting themselves tightly. Some even installed spider leg-like springs on their backs. It looked very strange. It must be said that the base's temporary military factory was impressive, as they could modify anything. As a result, when Lori and the other teachers arrived and saw this scene, they were all stunned. Chapter 75. The Strike That Pierces Heaven and Earth. Translator. 549,690,339. The teacher called Ella Raven was confused. What's going on? This battle armor has been developed and evaluated from various aspects, and it has been finalized after retaining the advantages of agility, flexibility, and defense. Now, you guys are adding thickness and flashy wings, which will have a great impact on the overall performance of the battle armor and weaken its combat effectiveness. Zach Lyons bitterly smiled. Teacher, when people die, what's the use of agility? His words made Lori Parma and the other 2 slightly silent, thinking of the student who was sniped and assassinated, realizing what they were worried about. Lori Parma said solemnly, let's go. Under the night, armored cars and troop transport vehicles passed through the sealed roads at a low speed of 50 yards. Except for the leading armored car that turned on the headlights, the following vehicles followed with low beams. It was not until they left the city that the armored car in front began to speed up, followed by the convoy at the rear, and the roaring vibrations were transmitted far away in the wilderness. The base of the cultists was nearly 100 kilometers away from Leicester City, located in the middle of a small mountain range, hiding in a naturally formed empty belly cave. In addition, in the valley under another mountain, the remnants of the main force of the rebels, who had once occupied Leicester City and been defeated, were hidden. Because most of these rebels are locals, they have many spies. Usually, the main force is gathered at the base, and most of the low-level personnel are scattered and integrated into villages and towns with various identities, so the Federation military cannot distinguish them temporarily. After all, it's only been a few days since the Federation defeated the rebels, and they haven't had time to establish a complete intelligence system. At the same time, these civilians have a vague hostility towards the Federation's military, believing that they are preventing the rebels from rescuing Koroya and allowing them to continue to be enslaved by the royal family. These ordinary people don't know the consequences if they let the rebels establish the divine nation on Earth. An hour and a half later, under the night sky, there were faintly undulating mountain peaks on the horizon, and Jack Clark and the others on the open truck suddenly became serious and looked up at the sky. From the night sky came the buzzing sound of fighters. Dozens of fighter aircraft flew over from thousands of meters high, followed by powerful aerial bombs falling from the sky. Boom, 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 boom. Far away in the mountain ranges, firelight rushed into the sky, and the dazzling light illuminated the horizon. Even separated by a long distance, Jack Clark and the others could hear the rumbling of the missile explosion. And this was only the beginning. As the first bombing of the fighter aircraft left, countless firelights burst out from the far left, and dense rockets whistled through the sky with a piercing scream. At the same time, the howitzer troop in the right side, which had already reached its position, also launched an attack, and heavy cannonballs fell from the sky. Boom, 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 boom. Under the bombardment of countless shells, the earth was shaking. Especially at this moment, the fighters' whistling sound came again from the sky. More than a dozen heavy ground-penetrating missiles fell precisely, and in an instant, the blazing flames erupted on the mountainside. With the deafening roar, the terrifying momentum made Jack Clark and others all frown. This was the power of modern weapons. Even Lori Parma, a senior martial artist who could withstand individual rocket attacks, would face only death when confronted with such bombardment. Even Vernon Leinster, a high-level cultivator, would have the same fate if he could not escape from the center of the explosion within a short time. As for Jack Clark and others, low-level martial artists with second and third layer heaven, their bullying of ordinary people and resisting rifle and submachine gun bullets was acceptable. If they encountered such a bombing, a single aerial bomb could send them to the west. The bombing has begun, and the armored vehicles and troop transport vehicles continue to move forward. With the command, the convoy that had been stopped started again. At this time, they were still more than 10 kilometers away from the rebel base. As they continued on their way, Jack suddenly raised his head and saw a thick beam of light falling from the sky at an altitude of 10,000 meters, instantly falling on the bombed mountain peaks. Boom! The light of the nuclear explosion illuminated the heaven and earth in an instant. Under that terrifying beam of light, the mountain peaks towering thousands of meters high collapsed with a bang, and billions of tons of boulders and soil collapsed, like the sky was falling and the earth was cracking. At this moment, everyone was in a trance, unable to believe their eyes as they looked at the distance. They originally thought it was just a large-scale siege battle, but they didn't expect the military to actually use such a terrifying firepower. Apart from the saturation bombing of numerous rockets and missiles, they were now deploying a weapon that was as terrifying as nuclear weapons, capable of collapsing a large mountain in one hit. By the time the armored vehicles arrived at the foot of the mountain range at full speed, the bombing had ended, and the aftermath of the explosion and the big pits were visible everywhere. As soon as the convoy stopped, Lori Parma and several military experts jumped off and shouted, "Special forces, clear the rebel base. Ordinary soldiers follow up and expand the scope. Don't let a single person go." No sooner had he finished, than the senior experts burst out with red and blue true strength and turned into a blazing flame under an impressive aura, transforming into a dazzling light and shooting out. Jack Clark and the others hurriedly jumped off the transport vehicle. Seeing Lori Parma and the rest disappear at the foot of the mountain in the blink of an eye, Zach Lyons was shocked. "Wow, old Parma and the others are so fast." Justin Wellen snorted, "Nonsense, they are 6th heavenly layer experts. Their basic physique is at least 30 times that of ordinary people, not to mention their terrifying true strength." Jack Clark's eyes narrowed. "I'll go first, you guys follow behind." After saying that, Jack Clark didn't wait for them. He stepped on the ground and instantly erupted with a terrifying speed of 50 meters per second, rushing up the mountain with a howling wind. After the military's saturation bombing, the evil god sect and the rebel experts were either dead or heavily injured. Now was the best time to pick off their heads. Even if some experts managed to avoid the bombing by relying on the terrain, there were still people like Lori Parma who were skilled enough to deal with them. All he had to do was rush up and collect their heads, which would earn him contribution points. If he missed this opportunity, he didn't know when such a good thing would happen again. Not only Jack Clark, but the other students also understood this, so they hurriedly shouted, "Jack Clark, don't hog all the benefits, leave some for us too. Wait for me. Damn, why can Jack Clark run so fast when we're all in the second layer heaven?" Jack Clark ignored the other students. When he climbed the first hill through the pockmarked crater, he saw an astonishing scene a kilometer away in the light of the fire. He saw Lori Parma and the others each holding a huge weapon, some with long knives more than 3 meters long, and some with halberds more than 4 meters long. Most importantly, these weapons were all glowing. What's more, the power of these weapons was also terrifying. Jack Clark saw Lori Parma swing his long knife, and a 7-meter-long sword chi instantly fell on the anti-aircraft fortification on the side of the mountain waste. Bang! The sword chi exploded, and the scattered fierce energy was incredibly sharp, instantly smashing the few rebels and the fortification inside, raising smoke and dust in the sky. The terrifying destructive power far exceeded what they had shown in the battle at the airport. It seemed as if they were two different levels with or without weapons, which greatly surprised Jack Clark. At the same time, he was also puzzled. When Lori Parma and the others had gotten off the vehicle earlier, they had no weapons with them, so were they space equipment. Lori Parma and the others moved quickly. By the time Jack Clark climbed the small hill, they had already disappeared into the darkness. Jack Clark's eyes flickered for a moment, and then he dashed towards the rebel base. The terrain here was treacherous, and many parts of the mountainside were suitable for defense. Even under saturation bombing, many people still managed to survive with the help of fortifications. For example, Jack Clark found a defensive position just as he rushed up the mountainside. The only problem was that this position had already suffered heavy casualties, and only a few rebels and a cultivator had managed to escape into a cave. Jack Clark turned on the mini camera on his body, and with a flash, he rushed into the cave. Poochie. In the dark, the light of the knife flickered, and the 3 rebels who hadn't recovered yet were beheaded. Boom. In the dark, Jack Clark turned around and threw a punch, shattering the air, and his terrifying fist instantly landed on the chest of a cultivator attempting to ambush him from the corner. Under the violent and overbearing power, the chest of the second layer heaven cultivator collapsed, spewing blood from his mouth, and slammed into the mountain wall, dying instantly. After killing several people in an instant, Jack Clark didn't look back as he rushed out of the cave and continued to sprint up the mountain. At Nobleman at. The information provided on the way indicated that there were more than 1,400 main forces of the rebels at this base. There were dozens of ordinary cultivators, most of whom were in the first and second layer heaven. There were about 10 in triple heaven. As for the 2 fourth layer heaven rebel leaders, they had been staying with the evil god sect experts, which was the mountain peak that had been hit by the drilling missile and bombarded by energy weapons. Bang, bang, bang. As Jack Clark reached the mountainside, gunfire suddenly erupted from the half-collapsed anti-aircraft position in front of him. Because there were too many bullets and they were too fast, even though Jack Clark sensed the danger in advance, he couldn't avoid them all. Or rather, he didn't avoid them this time. Otherwise, wouldn't the armor he had enhanced be wasted? Ding ding ding. Dozens of bullets hit the armor, creating a dense burst of sparks. One heavy machine gun bullet even hit his face guard. But other than leaving a small mark on the face guard and causing Jack Clark to tilt his head back slightly, it didn't cause any damage. Under the hail of gunfire, Jack Clark crossed more than 30 meters in an instant, broke through the wooden wall in front of him, and rushed into the defensive position, sweeping with a fierce wind with his straight blade. Wherever the knife passed, 3 rebels were instantly cut in half, and a large number of blood and organs spewed out, accompanied by shrill screams of despair. In front of Jack Clark, more than 10 rebels armed with rifles and submachine guns had no power to resist. In just 2 flashes, they were all killed. Die. In the instant that Jack Clark killed all those ordinary rebels, the soil in the back exploded, revealing a rebel who had been hiding under the collapsed wooden soil. Not pretending to be dead anymore. With an indifferent voice, Jack Clark turned around and slashed, overtaking the second layer heaven rebel who had been cut in half from bottom to top, and the battlefield fell silent. There was only the gurgling blood flowing out, almost dyeing the ground red. Jack Clark, dressed in dark red armor, stood among more than 10 corpses, like a devil, exuding a terrifying murderous aura. Chapter 76. Mutated Giant Beast. Translator. 549,690,339. There was more than one way up the mountain, and the 20-plus Special Forces soldiers were divided into 7 teams to charge up, followed by fully armed soldiers. When encountering strong resistance, the Special Forces soldiers would throw a few metal bombs directly, blowing the remaining rebels sky high. When they ran out of metal bombs, the soldiers behind them would use single rocket launchers and grenade launcher heavy machine guns for firepower suppression. If there were cultivators trying to break through and escape, they would be intercepted by these Special Forces students, cooperating to slowly clear the way up. At. After all, not everyone was like Jack Clark, with a speed comparable to a normal third-layer heaven, able to detect danger in advance and equipped with battle armor that could ignore light firearms. However, there were also some fierce fighters among them. For example, the small team composed of Justin Wellen, Howard Lee, Zach Lyons, and White Vale, had far surpassed most of their peers. Justin Wellen led the team with a heavy shield, recklessly charging and attracting firepower. He would ignore hand grenades and only dodge when faced with individual rocket launchers. Behind him, Howard Lee and the others would take advantage of the night to flank and clear the way at a speed not much slower than Jack Clark's. After all, the remaining rebels had been bombarded to the point of severe injury, with few left unscathed, let alone reinforcements or support. Boom, boom, boom. Outside the valley, under the night sky, Jack Clark was like a raging giant elephant, emitting a terrifying aura as he attacked ferociously, each of his attacks causing piercing shrieks. His opponent was a third-layer heaven cultivator, and from his aura, he was probably at the mid-phase of third-layer heaven. However, this rebel leader had already been injured by a missile strike, his power less than 20%, and he happened to encounter Jack Clark charging up the mountain during his escape. Splat. After taking 11 hits from Jack Clark, Caleb spat out a mouthful of blood and his gray true power aura began to dim. Feeling the weakening of his aura, Jack's own aura surged in an instant, unleashing a blade light that doubled both his speed and power in a fierce slash. The terrifying blade instantly tore through Caleb's external true power, cutting off his machete, and then bisecting his body. In the valley, the rebel positions consisting of brick houses had turned into ruins, with craters 3 meters wide and 10 meters deep scattered everywhere, the surrounding dirt still emitting heat. The place was littered with rebel corpses, densely packed together under the glow of the fire, resembling a scene from hell. However, not everyone had died. There were some rebels who had survived in the collapsed buildings and caves, waiting for the bombing to end before scattering in all directions. Among the darkness, a group of over a dozen rebels had just run out of the valley when they saw a figure in the distance. The leading rebel shouted, "Stop, who's there?" But the figure didn't stop, instead charging at them faster. The rebel leader's expression turned grim. "It's an enemy, kill him." Bang, bang, bang. Gunfire erupted. Countless bullets engulfed Jack Clark, sparking in all directions, but they failed to damage his strengthened battle armor in the slightest. For Jack at this point, the 20-meter distance was nothing, as he instantly charged into the crowd while being struck by bullets, and with a flash of his blade, limbs and broken bodies flew everywhere. Splash, splash. Carving through the enemies effortlessly, Jack had killed more than 10 people in the blink of an eye, including the first-layer heaven cultivator who led the group. Jack's eyes were slightly red at this point, cold and filled with a terrifying aura of brutality. He dashed past the corpses with a single leap. His target was the rebel headquarters. However, when Jack stormed into the valley, the rebel base was deserted, with nothing left but the ruins and corpses. Whoosh, whoosh. Jack refused to believe it and continued to search through the collapsed buildings, looking for any heavily injured cultivators that had survived. Killing them would also count towards his contribution points. Just as Jack was passing by a collapsed cliff, he stopped suddenly and turned around sharply, his sharp gaze falling on the pile of broken stones at the base of the distant mountain wall. He could vaguely sense a suppressed, violent aura coming from behind the pile of stones. "We've been discovered. Koi, go out and kill him." Upon hearing a faint female voice, the suppressed violent aura burst forth in an instant. Boom. The collapsed stone mill exploded like a high explosive, the ground trembled as a huge figure with a violent aura emerged, instantly turning into a dark shadow that leapt dozens of meters in the blink of an eye. Boomy. Just as Jack Clark dodged the attack, the collapsed building behind him was directly hit by the enormous figure, sending rubble and bricks flying everywhere and filling the air with dust and smoke. At this moment, Jack finally saw what the creature was. A mutated beast resembling a bull, over 4 meters tall, 8 meters long, with 2 pairs of sharp horns on its head, its entire body bulging with muscles, and its skin dark and shining with a metallic luster. The mutated beast now exuded an aura similar to that of a cultivator, its aura domineering, its blood-red eyes fixed on Jack with murderous intent. Its mouth was also full of fang teeth, which would undoubtedly cause severe pain if it were to bite. After the mutant beast rushed out, a slightly dark-skinned, beautiful woman with a hot body stood at the entrance of the cave. 5 soldiers stood beside her, each holding a heavily modified rifle with a thick barrel, their faces tense as they guarded her. At this moment, the woman shouted again, "Koi, kill him. Don't let him escape. Moo." The mutated black bull roared ferociously, its massive body charging toward Jack with a thunderous sound. The ground rumbled as it landed on its hooves, like a heavy tank. Facing this mutated beast, which was even larger than an elephant, Jack naturally didn't rely on brute force. He deftly evaded the attack with a slight sway of his body. And as the mutated beast passed by, he swung his knife horizontally in a dragging slash. Tear. As the blade crossed the mutant beast's abdomen, it was like cutting steel, producing a harsh, sharp sound and leaving a long wound as it capitalized on the momentum of the beast's charge. However, the wound was only a centimeter deep and over 2 meters long, which didn't even manage to cut through the skin of the mutated beast, let alone damage the underlying muscles. Such strong defense. Is this a mutated beast? Jack exclaimed as he looked at the mutated beast, which had demolished the building and slowly turned around to face him. If his knife had struck a small car just now, it would have been sliced in half, but it hadn't even managed to completely cut through the skin of the mutated beast, which was as if it were a thick layer of alloy. Moreover, this thick, several centimeters thick hard alloy was full of toughness. Moo. The mutated beast, which had missed its target, let out an angry growl. Its eyes became even more violent as it charged once more, its colossal body exploding with terrifying acceleration, like a sports car achieving 100 meters in 3 seconds. Amidst the raging wind, Jack dodged again by swaying sideways. But as he was about to swing his sword at the mutated beast's abdomen, a sudden, intense sense of danger struck him, and he retreated explosively without even thinking. Moo. With an angry roar, the mutated black bull stomped its front hooves against the ground, instantly creating an earth-shaking effect, and a powerful shockwave swept through tens of meters around it. The speed of the shockwave was too fast, so even though Jack had sensed the danger ahead of time and leapt backward, his body still stiffened due to the powerful shockwave. However, this stiffness lasted only an instant. His body returned to normal in the blink of an eye as his true strength circulated within him. Whoosh. At that moment, a sharp whistling sound rang out next to his ear as a tail as thick as a human thigh, resembling a steel cable, tore through the air, sweeping toward him. Jack blocked the tail with his knife mid-air. Bang. The tail, like a steel cable, struck the blade, bending it before the latter half slammed heavily into Jack's shoulder, eliciting an instant explosion of terrifying strength. Jack was sent flying more than 10 meters away due to the force, only coming to a gradual halt after skidding several steps upon landing. Gazing at the mutated black bull's snake-like tail that was over 3 meters long, Jack slowly let out a breath, his expression solemn, so powerful. At that moment, he felt extremely grateful for having the foresight to prioritize defense. Otherwise, that hit would have caused more than just boiling chi blood, it would have injured him. Jack slowly flexed his wrist, looking at the mutated beast preparing to attack again, while his fierce and sharp aura burst forth. As his true strength circulated, his entire body swelled, the tattoos on his skin under the battle armor becoming visible, and a terrifying oppressive force emitted from him. The muscles on his arms holding the knife bulged even more, making the battle armor creak from the pressure. After 2 probing moves, Jack had roughly gauged the strength of the mutated beast, which belonged to a typical level 3 mutant beast, equivalent to a cultivator in the 3rd layer heaven. Such mutated beasts possess enormous strength and terrifying defense that can easily withstand light firearms, requiring heavy artillery or anti-equipment sniper rifles to be killed. Apart from this, mutated beasts that reached level 3 also have a special ability, like the earth-shaking attack the beast had just unleashed. Under normal conditions, cultivators need to reach the 3rd layer heaven, with their true strength augmented and possess knife or sword aura to inflict lethal damage to these beasts. Although Jack hadn't reached the 3rd layer heaven, he remained confident in his ability to kill the mutated beast. Chapter 77. Exploding with one punch. Translator. 549,690,339. Mutated beasts, treasures in their entirety. After going through so much information about them, Jack Clark naturally wouldn't let this mutated black bull go. But just when Jack Clark was preparing to burst forth with all his strength, the woman in the cave behind the distant mountain suddenly shouted, "This man is too flexible. Koi can't handle him. You all attack together to restrict his movement. Yes. Seeking death. Upon hearing the woman's voice, Jack Clark's eyes instantly turned cold. Those 5 men were not weak, all of them were cultivators. Even with average strength, their outstanding physiques and the modification of their great power guns still posed a small threat to him, especially as he was focusing on dealing with the mutated beast. Just a single strike from the beast's tail had several tons of strength. If its sharp bull horn hit him head on, even the strengthened battle armor would be pierced through. As such, whoosh, Jack Clark's figure disappeared from its location in an instant. Upon seeing the fast approaching shadow, the woman's eyes narrowed, immediately shouting, "He's coming, fall back. Block the cave entrance and suppress him with alternating shooting." In that instant, their group of 5 orderly retreated several meters, their great power rifles targeting the entrance of the cave. Firelight exploded, and deafening roars ensued. Boom, boom, boom. The great power guns, with their thickened muzzles and increased ammunition, had a massive recoil that would have shattered a normal person's shoulder blade. They could only be used by cultivators. Much like the black steel pistol that Jack Clark carried on his waist, these were close-range weapons for dealing with same-level practitioners. Boom, boom, boom. With continuous firing from 5 great power rifles, the cave interior echoed with deafening noise. Bullets as powerful as those from sniper rifles sealed off the entrance. But what was the point of Jack Clark using so many attribute points to enhance his armor? Bang, 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 bang. The armored Jack Clark skated past the side of the cave, sparks flying as each large caliber bullet hit his chest, shoulders, and thighs. Each bullet, more than 10 millimeters in diameter, packing a terrifying kinetic energy within, had the power to puncture and even shatter a human body, but when they struck Jack Clark. How is this possible? Normal armor can only block rifle bullets, right? The sight of Jack Clark making his way towards them amidst the gunfire sent a wave of fear across the faces within the cave. Boom. Sweeping his blade, Jack Clark's terrifying slash ripped through the raging wind. Almost too fast to follow with the naked eye, 3 first-layer heaven guards standing together were cleaved in half. Instantly after killing these 3, Jack Clark turned and kicked. His right leg, covered by the armor, swung through the air like a battle axe, causing a burst of air. In an instant, he was in front of the second-layer heaven guard to his left. Crack. The forceful strength caused the enemy's front gun muzzle to bend. His chest caved in, and he was violently kicked away, flying more than 10 meters and crashing into the mountain wall. Just then, the last rebel guard's eyes hardened. Knowing there was no escape, he turned his gun muzzle, aiming directly at the back of Jack Clark's head and pulled the trigger. Bang, bang, bang. 3 consecutive large power bullets roared out, sending shock waves through the air which were then caught by Jack Clark's outstretched left palm. Seeing the few deformed bullets, still smoking, caught in the palm of his hand, the guard who had just emptied his cartridge stared in disbelief. From the Federation Special Forces soldiers' aura, he could tell that their realms were the same. They were all at the second layer heaven, but why was this guy so strong? His second layer heaven companion had been killed with a single blow. How did these bullets, which could easily blow an elephant's head to smithereens at close range, end up being casually caught? What about the razor-sharp kinetic energy, even if the armor defense was terrifying? Boom. At the exact moment of the rebel's distraction, Jack Clark directly gave him a devastating kick to the chest. With terrifying strength, the man's chest collapsed, spurting blood as he flew towards the outside of the cave. All this happened within a few seconds. It wasn't until then that the woman recovered, her face turning pale as she shouted, "Don't kill me, I am." Bam. Before she could finish talking, Jack Clark punched her head and blew it up with his left hand. For this woman with a ruthless temperament, who could control the mutated beast, Jack would show no mercy. In his eyes, only a dead enemy was a good one. At this time, the ground outside the cave rattled. When the mutated black bull saw Jack's punch kill the woman, a fierce light exploded in its eyes, filled with rage. Moo. Roaring, the over 4-meter-tall giant beast charged into the cave. Its colossal body almost filled the entire cave entrance, giving off a violent aura. Boom. The stampeding mutated black bull ripped through Jack's afterimage, and violently slammed into the wall deep inside the cave. Immediately, the entire cave shook, with countless bits of gravel falling. Taking advantage of the moment the mutated black bull hit the wall, Jack appeared behind it, his blade flashing like lightning, slashing towards its rear leg joint that was twice as thick as an elephant's. At Nobleban at. Rip. The sharp blade cut into the rear leg of the mutated black bull, making a sharp, piercing sound, and finally left a 2 centimeter deep, several dozen centimeters long wound, faintly revealing the dark red muscle beneath. Even with a full-strength blow, Jack could only cut through the skin of this mutated beast. Its defense was terrifying. Sighing, Jack retreated explosively. Bam! The mutated black bull, sensing that it had been attacked, swung its tail. Like a black python slicing through the sky, it exploded the air within several meters in an instant. Pity that Jack, nimble as a flea, couldn't be hit by the mutated black bull when forewarned of the attack. Inside the dim cave, Jack, who had dodged the tail sweep, reappeared like a ghost next to its head, thrusting his sharply pointed blade straight at its eyes. Moo! Feeling the attack, the mutated black bull abruptly lifted its head, its upper body and forelimbs rising high, then violently dropping. Boom! The ground trembled, the invisible shockwave sweeping almost across the entire cave, shaking loose dust and sending countless bits of gravel flying. But this time, Jack had only faked his attack, disappearing from where he was when its forelegs lifted. The cave must be where the mutated black bull was usually kept. The entrance was 5 meters high, and 3 jongs, 10.74 meters, deep was a stomach-like cave that was about 20 meters long and wide and 10 meters high. Digging a space this large must have taken a lot of effort, but usually, it was only enough for the mutated black bull to turn around. Such terrain was very advantageous for Jack. At the moment when the shockwave dissipated, he reappeared like a phantasm behind the mutated black bull. Squeak! The sharp blade precisely slashed at the wound on the rear leg joint. The cut felt like slashing through a tough, gel-like substance and had a lot of resistance, but it was much less defensive than its skin. With one swipe, Jack tore a 40-centimeter long, 5-centimeter deep wound, almost splitting open the side of the mutated black bull's rear leg, exposing even more vivid red tendons. Moo! In pain, the mutated black bull let out an even more enraged roar, furiously whipping its thick tail behind, managing to hit Jack as he was retreating. Bam! Jack was like a bowling ball. Under one hit of the bull's tail, he smashed into the cave wall 8 meters away, the brutal force making his chi blood boil. The very moment the blind cat hit the dead mouse, the mutated black bull inside the cave turned around abruptly, its eyes savage, and with mad momentum, rushed violently towards him. Boom! Gravel flew everywhere. Smoke and dust pervaded the air. This attack, besides blasting a crater several meters in diameter into the cave wall, did not harm Jack at all. In this narrow cave, the massive size of the mutated black bull was quite a handicap. The time it took for it to do one full rotation was enough for Jack to have made several rounds around the cave. Moo! The mutated black bull roared in anger and immediately rotated its huge body, preparing to charge out of the cave. It was not highly intelligent, but it too had realized that continuing to fight in this narrow space could cost it its life. Where do you think you're going? Chapter 78. Slaying Change. Translator. 549,690,339. Jack Clark obviously wouldn't let the mutated beast at hand get away. Just as the mutated black bull stirred up a raging wind, crushing the woman and the corpses of the rebels, a vicious sharp aura burst forth from Jack, and in an instant, he used Light King's fury to appear behind the beast. Bang! The power of the doubled-edged strike echoed loudly, still targeting the wound on the black bull's hind leg. Jack's goal was simple: to incapacitate the mutated black bull and determine whether it lived or died later. Rip! With the help of the mutated beast's charging kinetic energy and the eruption of Light King's fury, the wound was torn open another 10 centimeters, exposing the underlying fascia. The hot blood gushed out of the arteries. Moo! The pain made the mutated black bull let out an angry roar, and its galloping figure suddenly stopped. Its sturdy hind leg kicked back with the force of the wind, but Jack narrowly dodged it by the skin of his teeth. But, bang! Jack, who had avoided the hind leg kick of the mutated black bull, did not escape from its tail. As the tail swept like a black python, it slammed onto his shoulder, and he was smashed into the mountain wall by the terrifying strength. However, this was the entrance to a cave, and the mutated black bull could not turn around. At the same time, it didn't want to fight this agile insect anymore. At Nobleman at. After 3 consecutive strikes, it had already felt the danger of death. In addition to the earth-shattering bombardment earlier, it now just wanted to escape, to get far away from this deadly place. After all, its master was already dead, and no one would prepare food for it anymore. Moo! The mutated black bull roared excitedly as it burst out of the cave. Its massive body was like a super tank rumbling towards the mountain ditch. Along the way, the smoke and dust rolled, crushing all the collapsed buildings or road-blocking wreckage in its path. In the cave, Jack pulled his body out from the stone wall, suppressed the boiling chi blood in his body, and the muscles in his legs swelled up. In an instant, he disappeared from his original spot. Watching the distant rumbling of the escaping mutated black bull, Jack chased after it, yelling, "One killed your master. Don't you want to avenge him?" Moo. What responded to him was the mutated black bull's angry growl, but its body continued to run towards the mountain without looking back. However, with Jack's full-strength burst, his speed was slightly faster than the mutated black bull, so the distance between the man and the beast gradually closed in. At this moment, several figures appeared on the hillside in front, and in the faint light of the burning fire, Jack recognized them as Justin Wellen and others and let out a long shout. "The mutated beast has been injured by me. Stop it. A mutated beast. It's so big." As Zach Lyons and others were amazed, Justin Wellen's eyes lit up. "This mutated beast is injured." Excited, he didn't think too much, and carrying the heavy shield, he rushed down from the hillside. Jack was shocked behind him and quickly shouted, "Damn, Mr. Willard, you can't withstand its impact." What? By this time, Justin Wellen had already charged down the hillside, looking at the massive rampaging mutated beast with its earthy glow. A thick and heavy aura erupted. After Jack's reminder, Justin Wellen avoided the direct collision and placed the heavy shield diagonally in front of the mutated black bull's path. Bang! The galloping mutated black bull's knee collided with the heavy shield, and the terrifying force of the impact sent Justin Wellen flying like a cannonball. Thud! Justin Wellen crashed into the partially collapsed brick house dozens of meters away, and the wall crumbled, with countless bricks and debris falling and smoke and dust filling the air. However, with his obstruction, the momentum of the mutated black bull came to a halt. "Take this, my column of heaven." Accompanied by the low shout, Howard Lee, who was following behind, jumped about 10 meters high. The 3-meter-long, thigh-thick pillar in his hand fiercely slammed into the black bull's head. Bang! The terrifying force of the impact exploded in a circle. Even the mutated black bull was somewhat dazed and staggered back a few steps. But the strike merely dazed it. "It's not even hurt." Howard Lee, whose arms were numb from the reaction, could not help but be amazed, watching the mutated beast without any injuries. Of course, it wasn't effective. You hit it in the hardest part of its body, its head. With that, Jack Clark's feet smashed the ground with a loud bang, and he once again burst forth with Light King's fury, instantly doubling his speed, as if teleporting behind the black bull. Seizing the moment when the mutated black bull was dazed by the impact, he fiercely brought down his sharp and unparalleled sword. With one slash, the fascia at the rear joint of the mutated black bull's leg was severed completely by Jack Clark, revealing the thick and dense joint bones underneath. Moo! The mutated black bull let out a pained roar. The rear leg joint, now devoid of the protection of fascia and muscle, could no longer support its massive body, and with a crack, the joint broke, and it fell onto its side. Wearing the golden armor, Zach Lyons also rushed down, exclaiming excitedly, "Damn, Jack, you actually cut off one of its legs. We're going to make a fortune this time." Jack shook his head. "It's still early. It just can't run away. It doesn't mean it has no offensive power." As the two spoke, Mr. Willard with 3 sets of angel wings of light attached to his back, Howard Lee carrying an iron column, and Justin Wellen who had crawled out of the pile of bricks all came over. Looking at the mutated beast who was more than 2 meters tall even when lying down, Justin grinned his teeth. "This guy is so powerful, it should be a level 3 mutant beast. Where did it come from?" This mutated beast was raised by a woman from the rebels. Not only is it powerful, it also has strong defenses and an ability to create shock waves by stomping on the ground. "After we kill it together, we'll share the spoils. And be careful of its tail," Jack reminded them. If it wasn't for Justin and the others stepping in to stop it, the mutated beast might have really escaped in the night, since it was more familiar with the terrain here. Therefore, Jack didn't plan to hog the spoils to himself. In this situation, it was equivalent to sharing the risk. After all, he had only severed one of the mutated black bull's rear legs, not killed it. In this state, the cornered mutated beast might become more dangerous. The others also understood this reasoning, but since the spoils wouldn't be small if they killed this mutated beast, none of them declined. Now that it has lost its mobility, we need to be vigilant for attacks from its mouth, horns, and tail. "Mr. Willard, you take the heavy shield in front to draw its attention. When it attacks Mr. Willard, Howard, You take the chance to hit it from the other side and daze it with your pillar, and we'll target its weak points like the eyes and ears. If we can finish it, we do it. If not, we retreat and look for another opportunity. All right. Without the ability to move, the mutated beast was like a sitting target. Justin roared, and his mysterious martial true power erupted as he fearlessly charged forward holding the heavy shield. There wasn't a trace of fear or hesitation on his face. He was born to be the meat shield. Moo. At this point, the mutated black bull's eyes were blood red, and it was overflowing with murderous intent. Knowing it might die today, it forcefully charged at Justin, rushing towards it. Boom. Underneath the sharp horns, the heavy shield that even a thick caliber machine gun couldn't penetrate sank in, and the terrifying force sent Justin flying back. However, this time without the blessing of the charging kinetic energy, he only flew more than 10 meters away and rolled twice after landing with a thud. Just as Justin was sent flying, Howard jumped high, slamming the iron column on the bull's head, forcing the massive head to the ground with his overbearing strength. Now's the time. As Jack and Zack shouted, they struck on the left and right, each with a sword piercing the dazed black bull's eyes. The tough eyelids were penetrated by Jack's sword, sinking halfway in, while Zack's sword also pierced through the eyelids and exploded the eyeball. Meanwhile, the white veil accurately stabbed its sword through the bull's ear, sinking deep in by several centimeters, and then quickly withdrew and backed off after landing the attack. At that moment, the mutated black bull let out a furious roar and violently stood up despite its injuries. As it did so, it forcefully swung its massive head in the direction of Zack and the white veil. Boom. Boom. The unlucky two were hit by the bull's head. Even though it was just a glancing blow, the power of this mutated beast was too terrifying, sending them flying more than 10 meters away. Thud. The frenzied mutated black bull stood up only to fall back down again due to its broken rear leg, and in its agonizing pain, it rolled around wildly on the ground. The violent scene scared everyone to retreat, as being run over by the beast in this state would be disastrous even with their battle armor. If that happened, they'd be in deep shit. About 10 minutes later, the mutated black bull finally stopped moving, and its massive body lay there motionless. Chapter 79. Gratitude for the gifts from nature. Translator. 549,690,339. Looking at Justin Wellen, who was limping towards him with a heavy shield, Jack Clark asked with concern, "Mr. Willard, are you okay?" "I'm fine. I just landed awkwardly just now. A little circulation of chi blood will fix it," Justin Wellen said excitedly. "I didn't expect that before reaching the second grade, we have already killed a level 3 mutant beast." Zack Lyons, who came over, touched the corpse of the black bull and exclaimed with the tough feeling transmitted to his hand, "These mutated creatures are too gifted. Just a mutated black bull is this powerful." Doris Raven, who was a little upset after being swiped away, lamented, "Compared to us human cultivators, these mutated beasts have too many advantages. Incredible strength, thick skin, and meat, along with that kind of talent ability similar to a superpower. In comparison, aside from being more agile, we humans can't compete in any aspect. If we hadn't figured out true martial arts, the consequences would be unthinkable." Howard Lee said solemnly, "Because of this, for decades, the officials have spent a lot of manpower and material resources to clean up these mutated beasts to curb their growth." Jack Clark also nodded with a sigh. "Correct, if we let these mutated beasts continue to grow, they will become more and more dangerous for mankind. Since even a mutated black bull is so powerful, if those tigers and explosive bears mutate, their strength will be even more terrifying. If it wasn't for true martial arts and various weapons, humans would be no match for these mutated beasts of the same level. But while humans can suppress mutated beasts on land, what about those giant creatures under the deep sea?" Thinking about this, Jack Clark faintly felt a sense of unease. At this moment, Justin Wellen suddenly said, "You contributed the most to this mutated beast, Jack. If we hadn't cut off its hind legs, we would have been helpless. I think you should get 60%, and each of us 4 should get 10%. What do you all think?" He, being a close friend, considered Jack's benefits first. Upon hearing this, Zack Lyons and Doris Raven, who were also part of the small team, nodded in agreement. They indeed didn't contribute much, so they didn't object to this distribution. "This distribution is fair." Howard Lee also had no objections. Isn't this a little too much?" Jack hesitated. He originally intended to take 40% as his share, especially since Justin Wellen had been knocked off twice. Justin Wellen didn't care and said, "What's there to fight for over a level 3 mutant beast? If we exchange it with the school, we'll earn just 20 contribution points. Speaking of which, I have a suggestion. Howard Lee looked at the four of them. This mutated beast is useful all over. Be it its skin tough as alloy, nourishing meat, or the four horns and bones. If we put these on the market for sale, at least we'd get a selling price of 500,000. 500,000, such a big difference. Jack was somewhat surprised. 20 contribution points, with each point in the black market ranging between 3 to 5,000, which is only about 1 to 200,000. There's not much to say about the official price, 1 point is about 1,000, the difference is more than 20 times. Zach Lyons bitterly smiled. Can't help it, contribution points can be exchanged for resources, simply put, its actual value is already very high. But what Howard Lee is saying is right. This kind of mutated beef is priced higher in the market. The powder from grounding the cow bone is a favorite of some rich people. It strengthens the bone when eaten. Even the cow skin is a good thing. It can produce high-end luxury goods or special armor. The overall value indeed exceeds 500,000. Howard Lee continued to say, today everyone has made quite a bit of contribution. It doesn't matter if we get a few more or less. So, I was thinking, based on the market price, I want to buy this mutated black bull with money. I wonder if everyone could give me a favor. Zach Lyons looked at Howard Lee, seemingly thoughtful. If I remember correctly, you practice the advanced Skill-Ox Devil Mountain shaking formula, don't you? You want to purify the essence blood of this mutated beast. Added Nobleman at. Correct. Howard Lee generously admitted, the essence blood of this bovine mutant beast benefits my cultivation method greatly. After using it, it would produce better results than ordinary resources. Since that's the case, I have no objections. Doris Raven shrugged, I don't mind either. Under the circumstance of getting 10%, they will have 2 contribution points. If they exchange it for money, they will get 50,000. Even though they can't convert this money into contribution points, it can be useful in other ways. Howard Lee had given him face just now, so Justin Wellen naturally had no objections, especially since they made good gains today. As for Jack Clark, he nodded after a moment of contemplation. 300,000 is a significant income for his family, so Doris Raven won't have to work overtime every day then. Because both of her sons are studying, especially one who is in high school cultivating true martial arts, Doris Raven has been working overtime voluntarily to earn more money recently. Even on weekends, he'd come to work, despite Jack Clark's attempts to discourage him. But to no avail. After divvying up the mutated beast, there were faint sounds of footsteps in the distance. It seemed the main group had finally caught up. This meant the evening's battle was almost over. Consequently, Jack had no further plans to continue the search. He looked at Justin Wellen and asked curiously, so, how did you guys fare tonight? Did you encounter many rebel cultivators? At this, a grin spread across everyone's faces. Justin gave a sly laugh. We were quite lucky, actually. On our way, we encountered 3 triplex cultivators crippled by aerial bombs. Aside from them, we found some scattered rebels mixed with first and second layer heaven cultivators. After taking them down, each of us earned roughly 20 contribution points tonight. For each individual to have gained 20 contribution points, their haul was pretty impressive. How did you guys get so lucky? Jack couldn't help but scoff. I was up front and could only find 1 heavily injured triplex. There were a few second layer cultivators, but the rest were all from the ranks of the first layer heaven rebels. Despite this, he had scored the most tonight. He estimated his contribution points to fall within about 35 or so. Justin chuckled. That's just luck. Who asked you to choose that central path up the mountain? After the concentrated bombing, even the stupidest rebels would realize they've been exposed. The survivors would definitely choose to retreat down the sides of the mountain. Jack shook his head. All I wanted to do was to pick up the leftovers from our teachers. If I could find a 4th layer heaven that they'd heavily injured, it would be a windfall. Who knew I'd only encounter ordinary first and second layer heaven cultivators all the way? Initially, Jack had advised Justin not to go too far ahead, but after the bombing, it was he who surged to the front. It was all to scavenge for spoils. While caution was generally good, it was essential to evaluate each situation differently. While they were talking amongst themselves, shadows of soldiers gradually appeared on the distant hillsides. Soon, other classmates also gathered. They were all astonished to see a mutated beast that was even larger than an elephant had been slain by Jack's group. Half an hour later, accompanied by the somewhat bedraggled but exalted Lori Parma and the others, the night's battle finally concluded. In this battle, More than 1,500 enemies had been killed, essentially wiping out the rebels in Leicester City and the main force of the fleeing evil god sect, including even a high-level archbishop. Also among them, there were a few fanatics from the 4th and 5th layer heaven. Of course, the majority of these individuals had been wiped out by that one strike that had leveled heaven and earth. The few that were heavily injured were found and executed by Lori Parma and the others. Unlike them, Jack and his group had only dealt with the smaller fries. Even so, a few individuals who recklessly charged forward ended up injured. Under the gushing river water, a fierce aura enveloped the heavily armored black mutated beast. Its cold eyes were locked onto the 7-meter-long sea python ahead. Back at the hotel, Jack couldn't sleep, his mind still buzzing with excitement. As a result, he mostly focused on the heavy armored beast. Unexpectedly, just as he had emerged from the riverbed mud, he had encountered this pitch-black, poisonous sea python, which had discovered him at the same time. And considered the 2.6-meter-long heavy armored beast as its prey. The sea python was fast in the river, its thick body twisting as it shot towards the heavy armored beast like a dark line, reaching it in a blink of an eye. Seeing that the black creature seemed not to react, the sea python's eyes revealed a cold and brutal color. It enlarged its mouth to reveal 4 sharp teeth and bit down ruthily. Crack, crack. The oversized fangs clamped on the shoulder of the heavy armored beast, but couldn't pierce through the black armor. The venom exuded from the hollowed-out teeth had naturally failed to seep in as well. Faced with this, the sea python didn't give up. Its body wrapped around the heavy armored beast in an attempt to squeeze it to death. This was a snake's common hunting method, but today, the armored beast stretched out its claws and grabbed the python's neck, pulling it off its shoulder and biting down on its head. Bam! Under the horrifying biting force, half the head of the sea python was crushed by the heavy armored beast, with the dense blood immediately spreading in the water. The body of the python, whose skull had been crushed, stiffened in death but wrapped around the heavy armored beast even tighter, making a screeching sound with its terrifying constriction force. The heavy armored beast didn't mind at all and started eating the python's body satisfactorily. Thanks for nature's gift. Chapter 80. True Strength Tempering. Translator. 549,690,339. At 10 o'clock in the morning, Jack Clark was woken up by a phone call. Jack, one just received a transfer message of 340,000 and the note reads, "For student Jack Clark, what's going on?" Doris Raven sounded a little panicked on the phone. She didn't know what Jack had done for someone to transfer so much money to him all at once. Howard Lee transferred the money from the mutated black bull so quickly. Jack, somewhat surprised, reassured her, "Mom, don't worry, it's the money I got from killing a mutated beast with my classmates yesterday. It's clean and legal. Hunting a mutated beast." On the other side of the phone, Doris was stunned and even more surprised. "Didn't you go to the Koroya trial? How did you end up killing mutated beasts? Are you injured?" "I'm not hurt. It was just a coincidence that we encountered this mutated beast while on a mission yesterday, so we killed it casually. As long as you're not hurt." Doris on the other side of the phone breathed a sigh of relief. Knowing that the money was legitimate, Doris felt better and suggested, "Jack, I'll keep this money for you first, and you can use it to buy a house and get married after you graduate." Aren't you thinking too far ahead?" Jack said, somewhat amused. Marriage was too far off for him. However, he had heard a woman tell him this before, asking him to save his salary to buy a house and get married. At nobleman at. At this thought, Jack felt a little moved. After a slight silence, Jack softly said, "Mom, you don't have to save this money. I think you can hire someone to redo the inside and outside of the house. For example, repair the missing ceramic tiles on the outer wall and fix the peeling and cracked walls in the living room. Also, the washing machine broke down twice last month, so let's just replace it, as well as other old appliances." Before he could finish, Doris interrupted, "It doesn't matter about the renovation. It's fine the way it is now. You worked so hard to earn this money, so it shouldn't be wasted." Jack persuaded her, "Mom, you don't have to save this money. I am already at the true martial 2nd layer heaven and will break through to the 3rd layer heaven in less than 2 months. By then, when one joined the mutated beast trials in the 2nd grade, killing a mutated beast will earn me hundreds of thousands. This money is nothing. Moreover, Jim has been eating more and more lately, so we can treat him better with the food at home. When my strength is stronger in the future, I'll let him eat mutated beast meat every day to establish a solid foundation in cultivation, so he can be ahead of other classmates when he enters high school." Jack used to wonder why the initial physical constitution of Justin Wellen was so high. The reason is that they had started eating mutated beast meat early on. Of course, they ate the gentler energy mutated beast meat, which was mild in energy content. If ordinary people ate the powerful mutated beast meat, indigestion would cause death. And because ordinary people have poor absorption capacity, they need to eat for a long time to slowly improve their physique. This is also why mutated beast meat is so expensive. Under Jack's bright description of their future, Doris finally agreed to renovate the house as he requested. When she returned to the office, the smile on Doris's face could have been seen by a blind man. Sister Vernon, who was sitting across from Doris, couldn't help but ask curiously, "Jenny, did you encounter some good fortune? You look so happy." Doris happily replied, "Didn't one just receive a text message on my phone? The transfer notification of over 300,000 scared me." "What? 300,000? Jenny, where did you get the money?" The surrounding colleagues exclaimed in amazement. Jenny laughed. "I was shocked too. Since the transfer note had my son's name, I called him. Then one found out that it was the money he and his classmates shared after killing a mutated beast, and Jack said he would break through to the third layer heaven in just a few months." Sister Vernon across from her was shocked. Breakthrough to the third layer heaven in just a couple of months. "Jenny, hasn't your son been in high school for just over 2 months?" Her son had also practiced cultivation when he was in high school a few years ago, but he failed to achieve foundation establishment due to poor talent, so she knew a bit about cultivation realms. Many geniuses at South Sky Marshall Height only managed to break through the third layer heaven in their sophomore year. Doris Raven, who had no concept of cultivation speed, nodded and said blankly, "Yeah, it's only been a little over 2 months." At this point, another colleague hesitated and said, "I remember you mentioned last week that your son went to the Koroya trial. My husband works in education, and one heard that South Sky Marshall Height did send some freshmen to the Koroya trial, but only a few geniuses could sign up." Jack broke through the second layer heaven some time ago, and he even participated in the freshman ranking tournament, ranking 49th in grade. Other colleagues immediately exclaimed, "Jenny, one didn't expect your son to be a genius." "Yeah, and he's 49th in his grade, too. That's amazing." Many colleagues congratulated Doris Raven and spoke with envy. Hearing the noise outside, the office supervisor furrowed his brows and walked out, but he soon returned with a smile on his face after standing outside the crowd for a while. Jack Clark didn't know about all this, and after being awoken by the phone call, he simply sat up. Meanwhile, Justin Wellen was still sound asleep on the other bed. Holding his mobile phone, Jack hesitated for a moment and clicked open the trial group, then clicked on Lori Parma's avatar to start a private chat. "Teacher, do you have time now?" Lori Parma's reply came quickly, with a message sent in just a few seconds. "Jack, what's up?" Jack asked curiously. "Teacher, when I followed you guys up the mountain last night, one noticed that the weapons in your hands seemed a bit different from ours. And I don't think you guys had weapons with you when you got off the car. I know what you want to ask." Facing Jack's inquiry, Lori Parma answered readily, "As cultivators, we naturally have weapons too, but we usually keep them in sumi equipment to nourish them. That's a kind of equipment containing space, and after you break through the fourth layer heaven, you can exchange for it, so don't be curious. In addition, our weapons belong to extraordinary equipment, which is different from the ordinary alloy weapons of freshmen, and can allow us to exert greater combat power." Extraordinary equipment. Jack's tone was a bit shocked. Of course, what shocked him was not the strength of Lori Parma's weapons, but the idea of attribute strengthening. Lori Parma didn't know about these, and reminded him, extraordinary equipment is also the weapon involved after the fourth layer heaven, so it's useless for you to learn about these now. However, if you feel that ordinary alloy weapons are too weak, you can try using true strength to temper battle armor or weapons after breaking through the third realm. Although weapons tempered solely by true strength are not as strong as transcendent weapons, they are more solid and sharp than ordinary alloys, and I will send you the tempering techniques later. But under normal conditions, one don't recommend you doing this, as it will slow down your cultivation progress, and I wouldn't have told you if you hadn't asked me. Compared to tempering weapons with true strength in the third realm, it's more valuable to break through the four-layer heaven and smelt transcendent weapons earlier, as the former was eliminated 20 years ago. After that, Jack asked some more cultivation questions and put down his phone with a faint smile on his face. Lori Parma's words just now had resolved some of the concerns he had after strengthening his battle armor. Although the strengthened armor was very defensive, it also risked exposing some of his secrets. After all, if everyone else's armor gets damaged in battle and yours doesn't, anyone would be suspicious. Then there's the issue of the armor's color changing after being strengthened, but luckily he thought of an excuse at the time, causing the serious atmosphere of the trial to be a bit off. Now, there's a better excuse to cover it up, and he's about to break through the third realm soon. Jack got up, tidied up, put on the black and red trimmed military uniform given by the military, and prepared to go to the dining hall to eat breakfast, and then exchange life crystal for a breakthrough. As they had eliminated the main forces of the evil god sect cultists and rebels in Leicester City last night, Jack and the others were given 2 days of rest time. And due to the reduced threat, their mission would be adjusted at that time, and they wouldn't have to patrol every day. Chapter 81. Breaking Through the Third Layer Heaven. Translator. 549,690,339. It was still that female staff member who greeted Jack Clark enthusiastically when he walked out of the elevator. Student Clark, are you here to exchange some resources again? Jack nodded. Yes, could you please check how many contribution points one have first? Last night, after submitting the recording of the battle to verify his individual kills, Jack went to sleep and was still uncertain about the exact number of contribution points he'd earned. No problem. Please enter your student ID and verify your face. Soon, the female staff member replied with a surprised tone. Student Clark, you now have a total of 36 contribution points. No wonder she was surprised. Many trial students had exchanged materials in the morning, with most having around 10 contribution points, and only 3 of them had reached 20 points. In contrast, Jack had earned 33 points, which meant he had killed the most rebels last night. 33 points, huh? Jack wasn't surprised by the gains. Adding the 12 points from the mutated Black Bull, his total earnings last night should have been 45. This amount was roughly equivalent to half a year's rewards at school, and that was with the extra income for being ranked 49th in his grade. Otherwise, under normal circumstances, he couldn't even get that many contribution points in 2 semesters. As the saying goes, one can't get rich without windfalls, and a horse can't get fat without grazing at night. If it weren't for the fact that everyone was living in the technology era, where cultivators were not accustomed to carrying cash, Jack could have seized even more money from the rebels last night. With that thought, Jack wondered about the source of funding for the rebels. Did they not perform transactions at all? While racking his brains, Jack politely said, "Can you help me exchange for 3 level 2 life crystals?" A level 2 life crystal costs 15 contribution points. After an 80% discount, it costs 12 points, and Jack's contribution points were just enough to exchange for 3 crystals. The levels of life crystals are determined by the mutated beasts they come from. Those from level 2 beasts contain more and purer life energy, and they are therefore much more expensive. However, Jack's group hadn't found any life crystals in the mutated beast they had killed last night. According to the information Jack had learned, the rate of life crystal production was very low, and only the extremely powerful mutated beasts of the same level would have them in their bodies, such as level 1 peak or level 2 peak beasts. It was tested that when a level 2 peak mutated beast made a breakthrough and advanced to a level 3 mutated beast, the life crystals inside its body would dissolve and disappear. That's because the energy of life crystals formed had been used for its breakthrough, which was very similar to how avatars evolve after accumulating enough evolution value. Similarly, after breaking through an evolution, everything needs to be consumed and accumulated again. Compared to these mutated beasts, the potential of avatars is greater. For example, each evolution can absorb the characteristics of creatures and turn them into talents, and there is no bottleneck in evolution. Like cultivators breaking through realms, mutated beasts can also get stuck when trying to break through their levels. Many mutated beasts fail to advance even on their deathbeds. With 3 life crystals in hand, Jack rode the elevator back to the 18th floor, bumped into Marcus Lee, who was on his way out to eat, just as he stepped out of the elevator. Seeing Jack, Marcus Lee curiously asked, "Jack, one heard that you guys killed a level 3 mutated beast last night." Jack Clark smiled. "We were just lucky. It was a mutated black bull with average attacking power. Howard Lee, Justin Wellen, and one managed to kill it together." Marcus Lee was speechless. "There you go again saying you were just lucky. Can you stop being so humble? It's okay to be awesome, you know." Jack grumpily retorted, "Nonsense. Should one boast about how amazing 1 am instead of being humble by crediting it to good luck? Well, why not? If I killed a level 3 mutated beast, I'd definitely brag about it to other classmates." Jack Clark shook his head. "Forget it. One don't have a thick skin like you do. Since they were both teenagers, neither had the sophistication nor maturity of adults, so Jack and his classmates spoke casually with each other. After some mutual teasing and banter, Marcus left for the cafeteria while Jack returned to his room. Justin Wellen was already out of the room, leaving Jack alone, which was perfect for him to make a breakthrough. Compared to level 1 life crystals, level 2 life crystals were larger and light blue in color, glinting with dazzling ice blue glimmers under sunlight. Jack stared at the life crystals and thought, convert all of them into attribute points. In an instant, the 3 crystals turned to dust under the influence of an invisible force, and simultaneously, a row of transparent text appeared before Jack's eyes. 3 level 2 life crystals yielded 11, 12, and 12 attribute points, accumulating to a total of 35. In comparison to level 1 life crystals, the amount of life energy contained in level 2 life crystals mainly depended on one's luck, which could add up to 1 or 2 extra points. Seeing the 39 attribute points displayed on the transparent page, Jack felt like he had struck rich overnight, as it was the first time he had accumulated so many attribute points. Taking a deep breath, Jack Clark said solemnly, spend 20 attribute points to strengthen the 3rd layer of Dragon Elephant power. As his voice dropped, the Dragon Elephant true strength in his body suddenly burst into action. With every cycle of Dragon Elephant true strength, Jack's muscles and skin were strengthened, the elephant patterns on his skin became more distinct, and finally merged together. The true strength in his dantian, originally thin, swelled at double the rate, gradually filling the entire dantian, and then turned into a vortex, spinning wildly. The thin Dragon Elephant true strength continued to compress and refine, gradually giving birth to a faint black mist. Bang! The entire dantian shook violently in an instant, and an illusory elephant roar blasted like thunder. In an instant, Jack was enveloped by an aura as fierce as a raging elephant, his clothes and hair moving as if in a breeze, emitting a black glow, full of a heavy sense of oppression. True strength turns into mist, covering the whole body, the standard of 3rd layer heaven. As he successfully broke through, Jack slowly opened his eyes and retracted the aura with a thought. Is this the feeling of the 3rd layer heaven? Feeling the more violent power inside his body, Jack's face showed a brilliant smile. To break through the 3rd layer heaven in just over 2 months would definitely shock many people beyond words. However, precisely because it was too shocking, Jack didn't dare to publicize his breakthrough, so he had to wait for some time before slowly showing his progress. If anything, people already saw his fighting power as freakish due to his high compatibility with Dragon Elephant power, including several recorded victories against opponents in 3rd layer heaven. After feeling the surge of power within his body, Jack summoned his attribute page with a thought. Realm. 3rd layer heaven. Physique. 145-165 plus. Strength. 155H85 plus. Agility. 115-125 plus. Spirit. 113-118 plus. Talent. Soul split. Cultivation methods. Lotus Platform Meditation Method Complete, Dragon Elephant Power Plus, 3rd Layer, Mind's Eye Bright Knife Plus, 2nd Layer. Attribute Points. 19. Equipment. Common Armored Battle Suit, Solid Plus EO. Avatar. Hexagonal Armored Beast. Level. Low-level Unique Beast at Nobleman at. Talent. Strength, Defense. Evolution Value. 243 hundredths. This time, the biggest increase from the Dragon Elephant Power Breakthrough was in strength, boosting by 30 points, followed by 20 points in physique, with agility and spirit not showing significant gains. However, even now, his base attributes have already exceeded the limit of the 3rd layer heaven. Under normal conditions, those at the 2nd heaven peak would have a basic arm strength of 800 kilograms, while a cultivator who just broke through the 3rd layer heaven would generally have a basic arm strength of around 1000 kilograms. With continuous cultivation, the base arm strength of a 3rd layer heaven peak cultivator would reach 2000 kilograms. However, the power of true martial doesn't lie in physique alone, as no matter how much humans cultivate, their physique can't compare to the massive mutated beasts and giant beasts. The real strength of cultivators lies in their true strength. For example, Jack right now can cover his entire body with fog-like true strength, granting him 4 times the strength and even greater defense. In addition to this, the mist-like true strength can attach to weapons, forming knife and sword aura, fortifying the weapon while greatly increasing its attack power. Now, just after breaking through, Jack's combat prowess surpassed most cultivators of third-layer heaven because of his terrifying base attributes, likely placing him somewhere between the mid to late stage. However, without comparison, Jack still isn't quite sure how strong he is right now. Moreover, his endurance is a bit worse because the initial dragon elephant true strength isn't as abundant as those in the middle and late stages. At this point, Jack can be considered a genuine cultivator, gradually rising above the ordinary. With a formidable body density, elephant patterned skin membrane, and true strength protection, Jack could even resist ordinary bullets and grenade explosions with nothing but his flesh and blood. Not to mention the terrifying strength burst and movement speed. If he were to appear in ancient times, Jack would practically sweep the world by himself, and his abundant endurance would ensure he wouldn't be exhausted to death even if he fought for several days and nights in a row. Chapter 82. Mysterious Yellow and Thick Earth. Translator. 549,690,339. Boom 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 boom. In the base's personal cultivation room, Jack Clark's figure moved like the wind, and every action exploded with terrifying power. Every punch landed on an alloy steel pillar wrapped in mutated beast skin, causing the 2-meter-high, half-meter diameter pillar to shake continuously and the air to explode. When each foot landed on the ground quivered, like angry elephants stepping on the ground, and the aura was ferocious. With 185 strength attribute points, Jack's basic arm strength reached a terrifying 2,100 kg. Add to that the threefold increase from dragon elephant power, the explosive force of true strength, and the acceleration of the kinetic energy from movement, his casual punch now exceeds 10 tons. 10 tons of solidified force concentrated on the size of a fist, hitting out at an extremely fast speed, causes a tremendous pressure every time it lands on the alloy steel pillar. As for the backlash strength of punches and kicks on flesh, it was directly blocked by the strong defense of the elephant print pattern after breaking through, allowing him to vent the explosive power within his body freely. This is the main strength and defense characteristic of dragon elephant power. After cultivation, it significantly enhances power explosion and defense, although it is slightly weaker in agility. Rumble. Suddenly, Jack let out a low growl like an elephant, his muscles swelled and his entire body surged up, the momentum on his body increased several times, and his arms, thick as pillars, slammed down. Boom. In an instant, the air exploded, and circles of transparent shockwaves burst open. The solid and heavy alloy pillar made a screeching noise, and even metal cracks appeared at the welding points below. The third layer move of dragon elephant power, angry elephants trampling the sky. An instant explosion of unrivaled domineering power to shatter enemies, different from the second move sweep, belongs to a single burst killing move. Huff. Jack slowly gasped and stopped, dripping with sweat. At this moment, he only felt a refreshing feeling all over his body. This feeling of venting power was too invigorating. After a short rest, Jack looked at the remaining attribute points and decided not to use them to strengthen his weapon. Instead, he planned to save up for 2 more days to break through Heart's Eye Bright Knife. As the dragon elephant power he practiced had the characteristic of amplifying strength, the power of the true strength sword chi that it attached to the weapon when he reached the third layer heaven was average and not as sharp as the sword skill after breaking through. The difference between the two is like that of a rough iron sword and a steel sword. One seems sharp but blunts after a few cuts, while the other is tough and sharp and can cut hair with a single blow. True martial cultivation at the third layer heaven is a small watershed. Those who cultivate with matching sword and knife skills in their main cultivation methods will display their advantages at this time. In the early stage, they are mediocre in all aspects, their single strength burst can't compare to Jack, and their speed and agility can't compare to others. But after breaking through the third layer heaven, their killing power soars. Unrivaled sword chi, sharp sword light, and even stronger lethality. Unless Jack and the others also cultivate a set of sword or knife techniques, doing so would disperse their energy a lot, so each has its advantages and disadvantages. It's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Under the sunlight, Jack, dressed in a red-trimmed black military uniform, was walking in the base, preparing to head back when he heard the 1, 2, 1, 2 chant ahead. He saw more than 30 soldiers led by 2nd Lieutenant Jason Raven, running around the base with weight-bearing armor weighing more than 100 kg on their bodies. Not only did Jack and the others get 2 days of rest after the battle last night, but these soldiers also had 2 days of respite. When seeing Jack, Jason shouted, "Salute!" Immediately, the 30 people lined up in 2 rows saluted Jack neatly, making him hurriedly return the salute, but his movements seemed somewhat clumsy. He couldn't help it. He had never been in the military before, and suddenly gaining the identity of a special forces soldier took some getting used to. His military salute was learned by imitating others. Jason chuckled. Comrade Jack, did you just finish cultivating? Jack nodded. Yes, you guys are also doing your training. Yeah, these guys slept as soon as they got back yesterday. To keep their spirits up, I'm making them run a dozen laps. After exchanging greetings, Jason continued to lead his subordinates in Chi blood training, while Jack returned to the hotel next to the base. As soon as he entered the room, he saw Justin Wellen sitting cross-legged on the floor, meditating, with a blue crystal and a yellow crystal in his hands, surrounded by a vast aura. It seemed that Justin Wellen heard the door open, and he slowly opened his eyes. At Nobleman at. Jack Clark was a bit surprised. Mr. Willard, how come you came back so early today? Didn't you practice with the other students? These few days, Justin had been patrolling and going on missions in the morning, practicing shield battles in the training field in the afternoon, and moving true strength only in the evenings. Of course, his afternoon practice was actually him holding a heavy shield for the other students to attack at will, and then mockingly ridiculing them for not being able to push him back even half a step. I have to work hard. Justin looked envious. Howard Lee is going to refine almost 7 portions of level 3 mutant beast blood essence this time, and they are from bovine mutant beasts that perfectly fit his cultivation method. Once he refines those blood essences, not only will his strength skyrocket, he might even break through the 3rd layer heaven soon. Jack was surprised. Is his blood essence absorption rate that high? Under normal conditions, cultivators have an absorption limit for each kind of resource, just like drug resistance, including life crystals. The same goes for demonic beast blood essence, with the first absorption being the most effective and then gradually decreasing. By the 4th portion, the effect is almost negligible. Level 3 bovine mutant beast blood essence costs 10 contribution points per portion, obtained by refining the mutant beast's blood, muscle, and bone marrow. After refining, the value of the beast's flesh and blood drops significantly, making most of it useless. Moreover, the price of having an expert refine the mutant beast's blood essences is high. Howard Lee spent more than 500,000 on it, which might earn him some contribution points, but the total won't be much. Naturally, Jack wouldn't be at a loss either. After all, with the official recycling rate, he would get 12 contribution points, which is only worth a little over 10,000 yuan. Jack, have you forgotten that his cultivation skill compatibility is at a perfect level? Under such conditions, his speed, power, and efficiency in using blood essences and resources are extremely exaggerated. He could absorb up to 10 portions without a problem. So exaggerated. Jack was surprised. Although his dragon elephant power is said to have a high compatibility level, he knew it was fake, so he didn't have a clear idea of how good the compatibility really was. Justin rolled his eyes. Your dragon elephant power is only of high compatibility and it's already so fierce. He, on the other hand, has perfect compatibility with his advanced skill, so of course, it's exaggerated. If anyone in our enrollment can catch up to Jane Aiken, Howard Lee has the best chance. This guy has innate divine strength, and he also has a perfect match with the Ox Devil Mountain Shaking Formula, an advanced strength skill. Once he accumulates enough power, he will soar into the sky. Jack exclaimed. Amazing, it seems one need to practice even harder. At this point, Justin said with a smirk. But he has a lot of demonic beast blood essences to help him, and I have the mysterious yellow crystal. Once one break through the 3rd layer heaven, I might catch up to him. Mysterious yellow crystal. Jack looked at the earthy yellow crystal in his hand. Justin proudly said. Yes, that's it. My brother sent it to me from the mythical world. It's a high-level resource containing the aura of solid earth. After absorbing the aura of solid earth from inside, my black tortoise solid earth skill's defense will become stronger, and my body will become a mysterious yellow body containing the aura of solid earth. Haven't you noticed that my defense has gotten stronger recently? Last night, I was hit and flew twice by that mutant beast, but I was fine, all because of the absorption of the solid earth aura. Damn. Staring at the smug Justin, Jack remained silent for a while before finally uttering a curse. Shit, Jack really wanted to punch him. At that moment, he suddenly felt an itch in his hand and wanted to give Justin a good beating. Let this guy brag for a while. However, why the aura inside the mysterious yellow crystal was a solid earth aura, Jack was too lazy to ask. While feeling envious, Jack took a cup of tea and went out to the balcony to bask in the sun and soothe his emotions. At the same time, he planned to practice by taking on the persona of the heavy armored beast, slaughtering the opponent. Looking at Jack's frustrated face on the balcony, Justin started to snicker. All right, it's your turn to be envious. Relying on your dragon elephant power's high compatibility and its overbearing strength, you always show off during fights. It's about time you experienced some envy. But looking at Jack, it seems like his strength has improved again. The invisible oppressive aura he exuded when he came in earlier made me feel a bit uncomfortable. I have to work harder. Thinking of this, Justin closed his eyes and continued his cultivation. Chapter 83. Blood-Drenched Cannibalism. Translator. 549,690,339. Outside the balcony, Jack Clark appeared to be sunbathing and resting, but in reality, his consciousness had already sunk and arrived at the heavy armored beast's side. It had been over 40 days since its second evolution. After continuous devouring and evolution, the heavy armored beast's body had swollen another round, appearing thicker, heavier, and like a lizard with armor. In particular, the 3 pairs of feather horns on both sides of its head were blood red, half a meter long, and covered with sharp spikes, making the heavy armored beast look extremely fierce and domineering. At a depth of more than 20 meters, the heavy armored beast placed its limbs on both sides of its body, its sturdy tail swaying slightly, searching for suitable prey. Bew. A shadow flashed by like lightning in front of it, and if the heavy armored beast hadn't been observant, it might not have noticed it. Bew. The sound of the barely discernible water flow cutting through the air rang out as the shadow appeared again, this time flashing past the heavy armored beast's back. What is that? It's so fast, murmured the heavy armored beast, surprised. Since the heavy armored beast had entered the water, it had eaten no less than 200 ordinary mutated fishes, but it had never encountered one with such speed. Even the one that had left a white mark on the heavy armored beast's belly couldn't compare. Bew. At Nobleman at. Just as Jack Clark was startled, the black shadow flashed past the heavy armored beast's left side again. Due to the depth of the water and the distance of more than 10 meters, the exact appearance could not be clearly seen. But it was evident that the mutated fish had set its sights on the heavy armored beast. Now, the behavior of this mutated fish should be observing the heavy armored beast and looking for the right opportunity to attack. Since you're showing up at my doorstep, I won't be polite. The heavy armored beast's tail moved, and its heavy body slowly swam forward, seemingly unaware of the mutated fish. Suddenly, a black shadow appeared behind the heavy armored beast and appeared beside it with terrifying speed. The sharp-toothed jaws bit down viciously on the heavy armored beast's tail. Because the speed was too fast, the heavy armored beast didn't react until the bite was on its tail. Bang! The kinetic energy from the rapid movement flipped the heavy armored beast over, and the end crack, a row of teeth mixed with blood slowly sank and floated in the water. The mutated fish, which had failed to kill the heavy armored beast and had its full set of sharp teeth shattered, immediately loosened its grip in pain, wanting to escape. But could it just show up and leave? Boom! At the moment it released its tail, water exploded. The heavy armored beast suddenly twisted its body due to the full force of its muscles, and its claws struck the mutated fish. It might not be fast in moving, but that didn't mean its close-range attack speed was slow either. Under the effect of hundredfold power, the heavy armored beast's left paw slammed into the mutated fish's back, crushing the fish's body into 2 pieces. The terrifying force even formed an underwater shockwave, causing violent water currents that only subsided after rushing out more than 10 meters. As its body grew, the heavy armored beast, with its 2 talents, became even more terrifying. Its defense was invincible at the same level, and the hundredfold power was horrifying, completely unmatched by its size. Only at this point did the heavy armored beast see what the mutated fish looked like. In the blood-stained turbid river water, the 2 pieces of the more than 2 meters long, flat and long, sharp-bladed fish, covered with gray scales, slowly sank and floated. On the back of the mutated fish, a row of dorsal fins spread out like sailboat masts. Its head was even more ferocious, resembling a sea wolf's elongated mouth filled with sharp teeth. However, they had been shattered by the heavy armored beast's tail. No wonder it was so fast. Just by its shape, the heavy armored beast could tell that the focus of this fish's mutation was its speed. Unfortunately, being fast alone was useless. If its defense was too weak, it would be slapped to death as soon as the opportunity arose. The tail flicked, and the heavy armored beast moved forward and grabbed one half of the mutated fish's body with one claw. Its jaws filled with sharp teeth bit down and tore off a large chunk of flesh to devour. Although the flat and elongated mutated fish looked quite long, the sum of its flesh weighed only a few hundred kilograms and was soon consumed by the heavy armored beast. Not satisfied, It wreaked havoc near the estuary, only swimming towards the shore to return to its lair to rest and digest when it felt full. In the 10 meters deep river, as the heavy armored beast approached the shore, something with a splash fell into the water, slowly sinking in front of it. Looking at the palm-sized little fish, struggling with the fishhook stuck in its dorsal fin, the heavy armored beast revealed surprise. What's going on? Is someone fishing here? Suddenly, the corner of the heavy armored beast's ferocious mouth lifted, revealing its sharp white teeth. Its sharp right claw reached out and gently grabbed the small fish to pull it up. As the water level dropped instantly, the middle-aged man on the shore holding a fishing net excitedly shouted, "It's here. Quick, pull it up." "I see it," replied another middle-aged man holding a fishing rod, pulling hard. "Bender." Squeak, squeak. The enormous force caused the 9-meter-long fishing rod to bend to its limit, the fishing line supporting hundreds of kilograms making squeaking noises. "Damn, it's so heavy. This fish must weigh at least a few hundred pounds. Less than greater than really. Are you serious?" "Serious. I am not lying to you. Remember, I am a cultivator with second layer heaven strength. Just one shake of my arms can lift hundreds of kilograms. Can't believe I can't pull that fish up in one go, it must be huge." "True, hurry, I am going to use my mobile phone to take a photo of it for you. Watch me, once I exhaust that fish's energy by tiring it out, one can forcefully pull it up. Today will be my brightest moment." On the shore, two middle-aged men who came out to relax struggled desperately to reel in their catch, but they couldn't budge the big fish underwater. It only made them even more excited. Under the water, the heavy armored beast lazily laid on the riverbed with its right claw holding the fishhook, letting them tug. Occasionally, when it was in a good mood, it would raise its claw and give them a little motivation. About half an hour later, the heavy armored beast, feeling it had played enough, suddenly reached out with its left claw and held down a small fish more than 20 centimeters long swimming past. On the shore, Brian Raven suddenly felt a lightness in his hand and exclaimed excitedly, "It's coming." He then swung the rod forcefully upwards. Bang! The river water splashed, and a small fish more than 20 centimeters long shot out of the water, falling onto the shore with a smack. Looking at the struggling little fish on the grass, the bewildered expressions on Brian Raven and his friends' faces asked what happened to the huge fish I hooked. For the next 2 days, everyone was practicing diligently. After going through several life and death battles and gaining a large amount of contribution points to exchange for resources, this was the best time for cultivation. Jack Clark was no exception. Breaking through to the third layer heaven, his efficiency in absorbing energy while practicing with blue crystals skyrocketed. He's able to refine all the originally dissipating 30% energy without wasting a bit. During these 2 days, apart from cultivating, the members of the group occasionally chatted, exchanging information about the enemies they encountered and combat experiences. Upon Jack's inquiry, it turned out that Crystal Leinster's sisters, Matt Watkins, and Freya Louise had reserved some cultivation resources for themselves. After continuous battles during this period and being close to death, not only Jack, but also Crystal and others' strengths had grown tremendously. On the morning of the third day, Jack donned his battle armor and gathered outside the hotel. After several fiery battles, all the freshmen's faces had lost their childish innocence and had become much more mature and resolute. However, the styles became more eccentric. After 2 days, the other classmates' battle armor had changed. Some followed Zach Lyon's example and painted theirs gold, while others added wings like the white veil. But the wings weren't angel wings, they were the kind that draped over half the body and could be folded, like a sky set. Besides those, some added black cloaks to their heavy battle armor, which looked quite dashing as well. Even Howard Lee, the thick-browed, big-eyed guy, not only reinforced the entire armor but also welded 4 horns from the mutated black bull onto the shoulders and back of his battle armor. With 4 curved horns each measuring over a meter long and carrying a 3-meter-long pillar on his back, he resembled a formidable ancient warrior. In such a situation, it was Jack Clark, who didn't modify his armor, who looked relatively ordinary and out of place among his classmates. Should one modify my battle armor too? Just as Jack was pondering this problem, Lori Parma and the other 2 teachers walked out. Lori Parma said solemnly, "The main force of the evil god sect in Leicester City has been annihilated, so most of the military experts and troops will be transferred to other areas to provide support." "What, teacher, you're leaving? What about us?" The crowd suddenly became restless, as everyone was surprised by this news. Lori Parma spoke solemnly, "Don't panic. Teacher Sylvia Lyons will stay here, and you have an important task." According to the interrogation, there are more than 10 ordinary blood god cultists hiding in Leicester City, with the strongest person being a triplex. Their purpose is to spread blood seeds. As the name suggests, blood seed is an evil power seed that can turn ordinary people into real cultivators once absorbed. Those who absorb the blood seed are called blood disciples and can rapidly increase their power by hunting and refining the blood essence of ordinary people. Zach Lyons exclaimed, "Refining blood essence isn't that cannibalism?" Lori Parma said solemnly, "Yes, that's the terrifying aspect of the blood god sect. Many of the sect's experts killed by the Alliance earlier were blood envoys. The blood god sect has been secretly infiltrating Koroya for a long time, fostering a group of senior blood envoys and a large number of indoctrinated cultists by killing and refining blood essence in this barren land. That's why the Federation is ruthless towards the evil god sect, as these people have long gone mad." Lori Parma's words made everyone's face look very ugly and heavy. But you don't have to worry. In Leicester City, only ordinary blood seeds are being spread, and there aren't many of them. Their growth potential is capped at the third layer heaven. If those blood seeds weren't so difficult to distinguish from ordinary people, they would have been wiped out earlier. From now on, you can act individually or in teams. Pay attention to places where murders occur, and you'll likely discover some clues. In addition, there are still some scattered remnants of the rebels in the area. You need to clean them up to prevent them from joining forces with the evil god sect in other cities and making a resurgence. Afterward, Lori Parma gave Jack and the others a few more tips before finally dismissing them. Chapter 84. Dark Age. Translator. 549,690,339. Wearing battle armor and carrying heavy weapons, Jack Clark and Justin Wellen stood at the street corner, drawing the attention of passers-by. As the Federation defeated the rebels and suppressed the remnants in the last 2 days, Leicester City had regained some vitality. For example, there were noticeably more pedestrians on the street, and vehicles occasionally drove by on the road. Some shops and restaurants on both sides had also reopened. However, after the meeting, Justin Wellen's face had been looking terrible. Jack Clark couldn't help but ask, "Mr. Willard, are you constipated this morning? Why do you keep making that sour face?" Justin Wellen gave a bitter smile. "It's because of the blood seeds. Wasn't it said that the spread of ordinary blood seeds wouldn't allow them to break through the third layer heaven? What's there to worry about?" Jack Clark frowned. "It's mainly because the blood seeds reminded me of some unpleasant things." "What things?" Justin Wellen looked serious. "Under normal conditions, when we cultivators step into the first layer heaven, we absorb transcendent energy from heaven and earth to enhance ourselves. But just over 50 years ago, when such cultivation first began, the energy between heaven and earth was even more barren in our world than in Koroya. It was possible for cultivators to not break through the second layer heaven for 10 years. Then someone came up with the cannibalism cultivation method, referring to the giant beasts that had descended for the first time back then. At the beginning of the new era, giant beasts frequently appeared. The most famous example was the world serpent that appeared in the Aohidi Sea. It coiled in the sky above the city and swallowed millions of people in one gulp. It was said that the sky was covered by a giant swallowing mouth, and countless ordinary people turned into blood foam, forming a blood river that surged into the sky. The fundamental reason was that after they came to our world from their high-energy world, they couldn't adapt to the environment and instinctively wanted to replenish their energy. From this perspective, some crazy cultivators determined that humans are also energy sources and conducted a series of experiments, including refining the flesh and blood of cattle and sheep. I don't know the specific process, but as the blood refining method spread, the whole world fell into a 5-year dark age. You must know that at that time, there were more than 150 countries around the world, with a population of more than 3 billion people, but after those innate awakened ones suppressed the chaos and established the Global Federation, there were only more than 2 billion people left. Jack Clark suddenly felt a chill, as if an endless smell of blood was coming towards him. Approximately 1 billion people died unnaturally within 10 years. What a desperate and dark era that was. The mountains of corpses and seas of blood could not even be described. Nevertheless, Jack was still puzzled. How come one haven't seen any information about the deaths of nearly a billion people on the internet? At Nobleman at. Justin Wellen spread his hands. Of course, it's been erased. The technology at that time was far less advanced than it is now, and information wasn't as developed. Bender. In this situation, news of massacres and slaughters in some places would turn into rumors once it spread thousands of miles away, and most people would just treat it as idle talk. Those who witnessed or experienced it personally were mostly dead, and only a small number joined the military and became strong cultivators. Under these circumstances, after the official fading of the history for decades, almost no ordinary people remember these events now. People nowadays only know that the period was chaotic, and there were giant beasts everywhere devouring humans. Many people died due to local military missile attacks. At the same time, this is also one of the reasons why the official control of cultivation methods, wheel fishing, and cultivators is so strict, to avoid such a situation from happening again. I only learned about this when my elder brother had a breakthrough to the 7th layer heaven last year. In his excitement, he accidentally let the information slip and told me when I questioned him. At that time, I just felt dumbfounded after hearing it. Hundreds of millions of people had been eaten by those crazy cultivators. At this point, Justin Welland's face looked extremely terrible. Jack Clark let out a long sigh and said solemnly, "So, the blood seeds are the cannibalism cultivation method from back then." "Correct, but not completely." Justin Welland nodded. Many of those madmen back then were innate awakened ones who created numerous terrifying blood refining techniques, even capable of massacres on a large scale. Blood seeds are just one of them. It is said that this kind of cultivation method has a blood god origin, and the strong man who controlled the origin at that time had split countless blood seeds and granted them to ordinary people. Finally, when those people's strength had reached a certain level, that strong man would take back all their power, and in a very short period of time, become a terrifying existence. Jack Clark suddenly said, "Blood god sect's supreme god, Acunas. It should be it." Justin Welland nodded seriously. "These people, they deserve to die." A killing intent appeared in Jack Clark's eyes. It's normal for cultivators to have ideological disputes and grievances, but nobody can tolerate the act of eating their own kind for cultivation. Even if Jack Clark had never seen the so-called blood god, at this moment, he was filled with hostility towards this unknown strong man named Acunas. The population of Leicester urban area is more than 700,000, and with the administered villages and towns, the overall population is over 1 million. Under such circumstances, for 20 Special Forces soldiers to search for cultists and hidden blood disciples among 1 million people is like finding a needle in a haystack. However, this problem is easy to solve. After learning that blood disciples needed to kill to quickly increase their strength, many students, including Jack Clark, came to the local law enforcement bureau. As Special Forces soldiers, they easily obtained the authority to view recent death case files. However, due to the previous rebel incident, many files are currently missing. The newly established Law Enforcement Bureau only had the files of homicide cases from the past week. "Hey, line up, one at a time." Zach Lyons spread his arms, signaling his classmates not to squeeze in. Sitting in front of the computer, viewing the files, White Veil cooperated and shouted, "Everybody, don't rush. There's only one computer. Once I've determined a target, it'll make way." Soon it was Jack Clark's and Justin Welland's turn. Jack Clark reminded, "Mr. Welland, rule out those who died from illness or old age, and focus on those who died unnaturally in the past few days." With his heart's eye perception and the enhanced 5 senses as his physique improved, Jack Clark was confident that he could detect blood disciples within a range of tens of meters. "I understand. Got it. A death case occurred here the day before yesterday. The victims were 2 adults, and their corpses were found withered and hidden in a ditch. Okay, it's our turn." As soon as Justin Welland confirmed a target, the classmates behind him urged him to make way. They were all eager to eliminate harm for the people. More than half an hour later, the two appeared in the suburbs. Their eyes scanned the low and shabby brick houses, the narrow and dilapidated roads, and the rubbish and debris on both sides. Not far away, several dark-skinned men in tattered clothes sat with lifeless eyes at the entrance of their homes. The first impression this place gave Jack Clark was dirtiness, chaos, decay, and despair, with no trace of modern civilization. It's no wonder that the Koroya royal family deserved to be overthrown by the rebels, but unfortunately, those people should have teamed up with the evil god sect. Otherwise, even if they had overthrown the Koroya royal family, the Federation would not have intervened. Of course, Jack Clark knew that his assumption was a bit far-fetched. After all, the Koroya royal family controlled cultivation methods and the military, leaving ordinary people with no power to resist. This was also the reason why the evil god sect could develop secretly here. Desperate people wouldn't miss any hope, even if that power was poisonous. However, now that the official authority here is supported by the Federation, the place should gradually develop in line with international standards. "Let's go." Jack Clark said, striding forward, with Justin Wellen following. The alloy-cast battle boots made a dull sound as they stepped on the ground. As the two walked by, the elderly sitting in front of the door just glanced at them weakly. Old people sunbathing, children hiding behind doors sneakily watching them, insects crawling underground, and rats searching for food in garbage piles. Everything around them was exposed under Jack Clark's heart's-eye perception. Chapter 85. The Brothers of the Heavy Armored Beast. Translator. 549,690,339. In the office, Colonel Henrik Cobb praised, "These freshmen are not bad, they actually thought of going to the Law Enforcement Bureau first." Across from him, Sylvia Lyons shook her head, "This method can only catch fools. After today, the rest of them will definitely hide. I don't know how long it will take to dig out all these rats." Henrik Cobb sighed, "There's no other way. The level of modernization here is too low, and everything is chaotic at the moment. They can only rely on slow investigations. In any case, they are just ordinary blood seeds. Even if we let them grow for a month or two, they won't be able to cause much trouble. This is precisely what the higher-ups want, to temper this new generation of cultivators and consume Akunis blood god origin in the process. It has split so many blood seeds throughout the Koroya territory. Even though most of them are low-level, the consumption is still huge, especially when the thoughts contained within the blood disciples are extinguished. Of course, if those senior blood seeds grow up, it would also provide a great deal of nourishment for it. However, this is Federation territory, and such a situation won't be allowed to occur." Sylvia Lyons nodded. "As long as you are not anxious, that's fine. By the way, one heard that there will be people coming from other schools in a few days." Cameron Raven nodded. "Yes, these freshmen come from 2 second-tier universities. They will also join in the hunt for the blood disciples, but I am afraid there won't be enough of them to kill by then." Walking through a dirty and messy alley, Jack Clark suddenly stopped. Jack Clark looked up and saw a low courtyard in front of him. There was no door, and inside, 2 dark-skinned young men were fixing a tricycle. When they saw Jack Clark and the others, their faces showed restraint and awe, and they smiled apologetically. "Excuse me, sir, may I ask what is the matter?" "Nothing. Just curious how you plan to die." Saying that, Jack Clark slowly drew the long knife behind him, and a heavy oppressive aura spread from his body. At the moment Jack Clark drew his sword, the faces of the 2 men changed. "Not good. Run." A thick, bloody scent erupted from the 2 of them, but their realm was only first-layer heaven, which made Jack Clark feel somewhat disappointed as they were too weak. At Nobleman at. Boom. At that moment, the sound of a wall collapsing came from the side room. "Leave these 2 to you." As he spoke, Jack Clark put his feet through the ground, and his burly figure suddenly moved, turning into a black and red shadow that slammed into the wall. Boom. Bricks and rubble flew in all directions, and smoke and dust filled the air. Jack Clark directly smashed 2 large holes through the wall, and his figure vanished in the blink of an eye. Justin Wellen, holding a heavy shield, slowly walked towards the 2 cultists with a heavy, overwhelming aura, and asked, "How many people have you killed since acquiring the blood seed?" The eyes of the 2 young men turned red unconsciously, and despite Justin Wellen's oppressive aura, they showed no fear, sneering, "Not many, only 5. 5 lives, just to break through to the first-layer heaven. You really deserve to die." As his words fell, Justin Wellen's aura burst forth, and he suddenly charged like a mysterious martial turtle clad in spike armor, his speed 3 times faster than usual. Mysterious Martial Thick Earth Formula's second-layer killing move, Mysterious Atartial Tempest. Knowing that they couldn't escape, the 2 blood disciples showed a fanatical expression and shouted, "Death is just a return to the supreme embrace of Akunis. Burn with us." In an instant, a faint blood light ignited on their bodies, and under the intense glow, their aura doubled, and they charged at Justin Wellen with an evil aura. Boom. Boom. The charging trio collided in the blink of an eye, and the 2 blood disciples exploded immediately. Countless pieces of flesh and blood flew in all directions, and even Justin Wellen was shaken back 2 steps by the impact of the explosion. Looking at the limbs and corpses on the ground, Justin Wellen's face turned ugly, crazy. While he easily dealt with the 2 blood disciples, Jack Clark had caught up with the fleeing person in a dirty and chaotic alley. Seeing the thin woman clad in a linen robe stop, Jack Clark slowly asked, "Do you want to come with me willingly, or should one break your limbs and take you with me?" In the past, he would kill the cultists outright, but today Jack Clark intended to capture one alive to hand over to Sylvia Lyons or a military expert, hoping to gain some useful clues. Bender. As soon as he spoke, the woman's face revealed her madness. You Federation dogs, one day, the great Acunis will bring the end of the world to cleanse this world. For the great Acunis, as she spoke, a powerful aura of second-layer heaven realm burst forth from her, and her right hand reached into her bosom. Bang! At that moment, Jack Clark exploded with frightening speed, breaking through the air with a flash of his blade, almost instantly sweeping past her. This blade was terrifyingly fast, so fast that the woman had no time to react. Only then did a red line spread across her forehead, and with a pop, her blood and flesh gushed out, her body split into two halves on the floor. Jack Clark slowly sheathed his knife, eyes cold. As expected, they are lunatics, already burying explosives here and planning to die together. Upon entering this alley, Jack Clark had already sensed the dangerous atmosphere pervading his surroundings. That's why he spoke, diverting the cultist's attention while observing her expression and body movements, not giving her the chance to press the remote control. By the time they returned to the courtyard, the law enforcement squad had already arrived. Leaving the matter of the corpse to them, Jack Clark and Justin Wellen exchanged words. Did you find anything? Justin Wellen shook his head. Nothing, everything in the house was normal, and no clues about other cultists were found. These guys seek death at the slightest disagreement, seeming normal on the surface while actually insane. Their existence seems only to create chaos. Jack Clark suggested. Let's go, we'll talk more on our way back. They boarded the off-road vehicle of the Law Enforcement Bureau and returned by noon. On the third floor of the cafeteria, Jack Clark was just eating when his gaze suddenly paused. At the depth of over 20 meters beneath the dark riverbed, a mutant alligator, 7 meters long, with a body covered in black scales, stood on all fours, its eyes cold as it stared ahead. At this spot, the heavy armored beast looked somewhat surprised at the mutant alligator. Similar black scales, similar sharp claws on all fours, ferocious large mouths, stout bodies and tails. Apart from the differences in their heads and the feather-like horns on both sides, the two mutated creatures gave the impression that they were mutated from the same species. Despite hunting in the river for so long, the heavy armored beast had never seen a mutated creature similar to itself before, even though this fellow was an alligator. Roar. The heavy armored beast's mouth opened slightly, letting out a low growl as a greeting. Gurgle. Gurgle. In contrast to the friendly heavy armored beast, the mutant alligator was far less courteous, letting out gurgling vibrations from its mouth as its massive body menacingly approached. Seeing this, the heavy armored beast's gaze turned colder. Roar. The heavy armored beast let out a final warning growl. At the same time, the mutant alligator had already come within 5 meters of the heavy armored beast, its huge body suddenly pouncing at it, treating the heavy armored beast as prey. Seeking death. Seeing the mutant alligator pounce in the blink of an eye, the heavy armored beast's forelimb muscles bulged. Bang! The waters exploded, and the 7-meter-long mutant alligator was sent flying by the heavy armored beast's claw strike. Its massive body rolled continuously along the murky riverbed, its flesh and blood blurred by the impact. At this moment, the mutant alligator that was struck hard began to doubt its existence in life. Chapter 86. Too amazing. Translator. 549,690,339. Under the murky river surface, right when the mutant alligator was sent flying, the heavy armored beast quickly caught up and lunged at it, its robust left claw swiftly striking down. Boom. With one claw from the heavy armored beast, the mutant alligator's head plunged directly into the riverbed. Due to the tremendous force, half of the mutant alligator's body sank into the ooze, immediately struggling fervently, its gargantuan body exuding an astonishing amount of strength. For a moment, the entire riverbed turned muddy, with turbulent water spraying. Under normal conditions, crocodiles can hold their breath for an hour or two underwater, and this mutant alligator, having undergone mutation and evolution, had naturally stronger breath-holding capacities. But, a few minutes later, with a stark crack, the frantically struggling mutant alligator stiffened abruptly. Looking at the mutant alligator, whose neck was broken under its own grip, the heavy armored beast exhaled a burst of bubbles, a hint of regret in its eyes. Originally, when it saw this similar mutant alligator, it was considering the idea of recruiting it to serve as a little brother. Having a bodyguard following around when it went out seemed quite nice. Who knew this creature was so foolish? The heavy armored beast gripped the body of the mutant alligator with its 2 claws, a tear trickling down from the corner of its mouth as it bit down fiercely. The heavy armored beast's eyes brightened as it found the taste of this crocodile to be seemingly good, its meat having more chewiness than those of the mutated fishes. Jack, Jack. Seeing Jack lost in thought, Justin Wellen across from him called out twice. What's up? Jack snapped back to reality. Justin looked at him curiously before saying, one was suggesting whether we should split up and act independently in the afternoon. We might be more efficient that way. That works, Jack nodded. Initially, he formed a team with Justin intending to take care of him. With his cultivation at the third layer and keen perception, any blood disciples he encountered wouldn't escape at all. Bender. Jack cautioned, I have a feeling we need to get down to business in the afternoon. After this wave of sudden attack, those blood disciples will probably hide deeper and won't be as easy to catch. That's what I was thinking too. After lunch, the duo soon arrived at the Law Enforcement Bureau. Some folks over there didn't even have lunch, they were engaged in browsing dossiers. Jack quickly zeroed in on a suspicious location. At 2 in the afternoon, Jack arrived alone at an aging community south of the city. As he drew closer, his keen olfactory sense could detect a faint stench of blood, his gaze fleeting to a building nearby. As his physique grew stronger, even without relying on his heart's eye, Jack's hearing, vision, and sense of smell had all transcended human limits. Treading on the dim stairwell, each of Jack's footsteps was heavily laden. When passing by the third floor, someone tried to exit. Upon opening the door, he was immediately startled by the sight of Jack, draped in dark red armor with a sword slung on his back, hurriedly shutting the door. Ignoring these ordinary folk, Jack slowly ascended, his acute senses detecting the faint smell of blood in the air. His steps finally paused before the door of 603 on the 6th floor. Knock, knock, knock. Jack gently knocked on the door. Who is it? A man's voice emerged from inside. In a deep voice, Jack said, Delivery man. Boom. The moment the words left his mouth, Jack directly slammed onto the iron door. Under the impact of his terrifying strength, even the doorframe and the wall were sent flying inward. Within the diffuse smoke and dust, Jack, decked in dark red armor, looked coldly at the panicked glasses man in the living room, who was handsome and clean-cut. Below him, in the corner of the sofa, one could vaguely see a ghastly pale dead man's hand. What are you doing? Confronted by the wall-breaking entrance of Jack, the glasses man exuded an air of fearful tension. Jack coldly retorted, Stop pretending. Even if I closed my eyes, I would still be able to smell the strong stench of blood on you. His cover blown, the glasses man's face changed as he lamented in grief and indignation. Why can't you all let me go? I just want to live well. As he spoke, the energy of his blood chi at the peak of the first layer heaven burst forth from his body. Grabbing the coffee table with his 2 hands, he flung it towards Jack, while he turned and dashed towards the window. Boom. The coffee table in midair exploded with a deafening sound. In the blink of an eye, Jack's figure appeared like the wind behind the glasses man, slashing his overpowering knife down. Thud. The man with the glasses was suddenly split into 2 halves, crashing onto the ground with a loud thud, and bright, hot blood spurted out, rapidly painting the floor red. The scene was both bloody and brutal. 1 contribution point secured. In his calm voice, Jack Clark flicked his wrist, shaking off the blood on his blade, before pulling out his phone to call the law enforcement team to take over the cleanup. Next, Jack Clark took up another mission, but unfortunately, the blood disciple who had committed murder 3 days ago had managed to cover their tracks well. By the time he had finished his day's work and returned to the hotel, it was already past 5 in the afternoon. Most of his classmates were already back, with many of them wearing smiles on their faces, signaling a day of successful harvests. However, not everyone had managed to track down the blood disciples. Furthermore, after today, the remaining blood disciples would most likely become more cautious. As time went on and they continued to kill and refine their essence blood, they would become even more powerful. According to Justin Wellen's estimates, these creatures could make rapid progress equivalent to half a month of hard cultivation in their school by killing just 1 person. Their strength enhancement was akin to strapping a rocket to their back. Although they would need time to refine after killing someone, the ease with which they could enhance their powers explained why there was such an enormous bloody massacre decades ago. After dinner, Jack Clark headed to the basement logistics department. Today, having killed a level 2 cultist and a level 1 blood disciple, he had exactly enough for 4 contribution points, which could be exchanged for a level 1 life crystal. The person on duty behind the counter this time was a different one. Seeing Jack Clark, he greeted warmly, Hello, what would you like to exchange? One level 1 life crystal. Alright, please wait a moment. In the elevator, Jack Clark reached into his pocket and gripped the life crystal, thinking, convert attribute points. You've converted a crystallized life energy, gaining 4 attribute points. Seeing the 23 free attribute points on his attribute page, a smile spread across Jack Clark's face. These points were enough for him to enhance his mind's eye bright knife to the 3rd layer. Once his blade could convert true strength into sharp sword chi, his combat power would once again surge tremendously. When Jack Clark returned to his hotel room, he saw Justin Wellen lounging on the sofa. Achoo, you've come back at just the right time. Freya Louise was just mentioning you in the chat. Did she need something from me? Jack Clark asked, puzzled. No, she was just wondering why you haven't been active in the chat recently. Of course I've been cultivating, said Jack Clark, puzzled. His motivation for cultivation was running high since he had just broken through to the 3rd layer. Plus, he had to spend time transforming into the heavy armored beast and laying waste to the rivers. Every day was chock full with activities. Especially today when he had been preoccupied with killing, he barely had any time for cultivation. Even while controlling the heavy armored beast to feed, he found himself somewhat distracted. I knew it, Justin Wellen shook his head. However, after Justin Wellen's reminder, Jack Clark did log into the chat group to post a message before curiously asking, by the way, class leader, has Jane Aiken broken through to the 3rd layer heaven? Crystal Leinster. Huh, Jack Clark, how did you know she broke through? Jack Clark paused. I just asked. Freya Louise chimed in. Today, Jane Aiken encountered a 3rd layer rebel cultivator. Even though she was only at the 2nd layer heaven, she managed to kill him with her overwhelming power. Then, less than half a day after she returned to the base, we heard she had broken through to the 3rd layer heaven. Isn't she amazing? Jack Clark exclaimed. Amazing indeed. She is undoubtedly the #1 prodigy of South Sky Martial Height. The tone of his voice didn't hint in any way that he himself had already broken through to the 3rd layer heaven. Justin Wellen acknowledged with envy. Her extraordinary talent has already been very clear. It's been over a month since she broke through to the 2nd layer heaven. It's completely normal for her to have suddenly broken through to the 3rd layer heaven now. Especially after going through so many battles here and having an abundance of resources. But even as he said this, Justin couldn't help but feel a tinge of envy. He too wished he could break through as easily as drinking water, just like Jane Aiken. Chapter 87. Monster. Translator. 549,690,339. The next morning, Justin Wellen and the others went to the law enforcement headquarters again, wanting to check if there were any new murders or people killed by blood disciples in other places yesterday. As for Jack Clark, he went to the neighboring military base and requested a cultivation room. Jack Clark exhaled slightly, somewhat expectant, and a voice echoed in his mind. Consume 20 attribute points, enhance Heart's Eye Bright Knife to 3rd layer heaven. Buzz. With the disappearance of 20 attribute points, Jack's consciousness was instantly pulled into a mysterious realm. Similar to the Heart's Eye but more vast, it seemed as if the entire person's heart was infinitely magnified, covering the entire cultivation room and extending several dozen meters in diameter outside. Within this range, Jack could sense the wind blowing and the ripples of air flow. This kind of perception was very mysterious, not the clear image of releasing spirit power, but more of an indistinct intuition. At the same time, a sharp power was born out of thin air within Jack's body, automatically circulating and opening a new route in his body. This circulation route was different from the dragon elephant power that covered his entire body, with the most involvement in his upper body and arms, eventually returned to the Dantian after 10 cycles. Facing this sharp true strength, the dragon elephant true strength in the Dantian instantly burst out, rushing with a thick and ferocious aura. Bang! The two true strengths collided, causing a violent shockwave. Jack didn't react to any of this, as he was currently immersed in the 3rd realm of Heart's Eye, allowing the two true strengths within his Dantian to collide and intertwine. He didn't know how much time had passed. When Jack woke up, he found that the true strength in his body had doubled, and the originally thick dragon elephant true strength had become a bit sharper. Jack was not surprised with this result, because after breaking through to the 3rd layer of sword skill, true strength would be born from the outside in, called sword chi. If there were other main cultivation methods at this time, then this sword chi would merge with the true strength. In the cultivation room, Jack gently unsheathed his sword, and the true strength in his body followed the new circulation route in his arms, merging into the blade, instantly revealing a layer of black sword chi. Compared to the faintly shining blade, the black sword chi was more condensed, as if an inch-long faint black blade had been added, emitting a sharp edge. Whoosh! Jack simply waved his straight blade lightly, and the sound of air being torn apart echoed in the air, terrifyingly sharp. Afternoon. In the revitalized and bustling area, Jack, dressed in black-red armor and carrying a long knife, walked down the street, with a black cloak swaying slightly behind him. This appearance contrasted sharply with the styles of the surrounding commercial shops and was very eye-catching. However, most pedestrians just glanced at him and then looked away in awe, not daring to stare directly at the figure in battle armor. Although Jack and the others had only arrived in Leicester for a week, everyone knew not to mess with these black-red armored Special Forces soldiers, added nobleman at. These Special Forces soldiers had followed the armored squadron to patrol the entire city, killing many rebels in the gunfire, and their strength was terrifying. It's been said that they have been hunting down dangerous elements in the past few days and even broke into houses to kill people. It is said that one of them carried a heavy shield weighing hundreds of kilograms, and after killing a person, would shake all the egg yolks in the house before leaving, which was extremely brutal. Too terrifying. Jack didn't know what these people were thinking. His attention was focused on himself, or rather, on sensing those gazes. Ah, this gaze is a bit fearful, this one doesn't have any feeling. Curiosity. Mockery, this one seems to carry some hatred. Did a family member of his join the rebels and get killed by me? As the heart's eye broke through to the third layer, the indistinct perception became even more sensitive, and Jack could almost sense the gaze upon him. Moreover, unlike the vague perception of the second layer, he could even sense the faint emotions carried by these gazes. However, sometimes being too sensitive was not a good thing, as it made Jack feel like needles were falling on him at every moment, which was very uncomfortable. That's why he came here, planning to practice his control by relying on the gazes of pedestrians. He wanted to train this sensitive response to be normal, only retaining the stress response to malicious intent, otherwise, his nervous system would soon be exhausted. Because constantly sensing the emotions carried by those gazes would consume his mental willpower, he must control it. For example, hypnotize oneself subconsciously, set a predetermined program, only targeting malice and killing intent would elicit a reaction. At this moment, Jack Clark suddenly looked up to his left, his gaze passing through the building's glass, landing on a young man in a suit and leather shoes on the 5th floor. Although this guy looked normal, Jack felt a strong malice from his eyes. One didn't expect to gain something unexpected just by coming here to practice cultivation methods. Jack said, the corners of his mouth slightly raised. He entered the lobby, took the elevator to the 5th floor. This was a foreign trade shopping company named Alist. Jack directly pushed the glass door open and walked in, his gaze swept over the several workers inside. Seeing Jack in his battle armor, the female receptionist hurriedly stood up, saying nervously, hello, can I help you with something? From under his face mask, Jack's gaze swept over her, saying indifferently, I suspect that there are dangerous individuals hiding in your company, I need to check. How could that be? Comrade, are you mistaken? We are a legitimate foreign trade company with qualified operating licenses. The female receptionist was terrified and panicked, constantly explaining. But Jack wouldn't pay any attention to her, and went straight to the office with the manager's sign. At this moment, the office door was opened. The elite young man in a suit and leather shoes walked out, smiling and said, Sir, 1 a.m. the manager here. If you have any issues, you can talk to me. As the young man came out, Jack paused for a moment. Surprisingly, he couldn't smell any blood on the young man, nor did he have that disgusting feeling that came instinctively from evil god sect cultists. If it wasn't for his heart's eye intuition after breaking through telling him that this person had a problem, he definitely wouldn't think this person had a problem. Jack couldn't help but exclaim, such a strong hiding ability. In my normal perception, you are almost as ordinary as a regular person. Immediately, the young man's expression changed slightly, his expression stiffened, and he forced a smile. I am sorry, I don't understand what you're talking about. No need to pretend. Do you want to come with me to the Federation military base, or should one cut off your limbs and take you away? With that, a heavy oppressive aura spread from Jack. Very impressive. I didn't expect you to find out even in this situation. Seeing that Jack had recognized him, the young man no longer pretended, his eyes became cold and sharp, his gaze swept over Jack and the other employees, and he said with regret. You should have come up here. You freshmen just started cultivating not long ago and then suddenly broke through to the second layer heaven. You should have a brighter future as a genius. And my employees who have been with me for a year, they are hardworking and conscientious, I am somewhat reluctant to let them die with me. Unfortunately, you insisted on seeking death, so I will have to oblige. By the way, one haven't eaten a genius before, one wonder what the difference is between your flesh and blood and that of ordinary people. As he spoke, the young mont's eyes turned blood red, his entire body muscles continuously expanded, and red scales that resembled snake scales constantly grew out on his body. Ripping. Bender. Muscles tore the clothes apart, and, in the blink of an eye, a muscular monster more than 2 meters tall, with sharp double claws and covered in red scales appeared in front of everyone. A fearful aura flowed like fresh blood on its body, emitting an instinctive fear that felt like a rabbit encountering a fierce tiger. That sense of horror, as if facing a natural enemy, made the employees' bodies stiff, their expressions fearful. Most importantly, the aura of this red monster was from the third layer heaven realm. It was not like the cultist Jack encountered initially in the third realm who gave people a weak feeling, nor like the rebel who had been heavily injured by a missile. This monster was strong, its aura alone was oppressive enough to make the surrounding air seem to solidify, full of horrifying oppression. Chapter 88. Unrivaled Sweep. Translator. 549,690,339. All. Seeing the manager turned into a red monster in the blink of an eye, the female receptionist felt extremely terrified, and her whole body went limp as she collapsed to the ground. Even Jack Clark was a bit astonished at this point. He had thought that he caught an ordinary blood disciple, but unexpectedly, he grabbed a big fish who could also transform. At this moment, an employee tried to run outside in fear. Trying to leave. Everyone, stay put. The red monster looked fierce as its body suddenly moved with incredible speed, bursting the air and appeared behind that employee in an instant. Rip. The claw covered with red scales tore through the air, making a sound like ripping fabric. The employee looked back in despair as the claw aimed at her chest, ready to disembowel her in the next moment. Bang! Jack's black long knife slashed upwards on the red monster's arm. The sharp blade and blood-colored true strength collided, instantly exploding a circle of black and red halo. The overbearing force even pushed the red monster back several steps. What a strong defense! Jack stood in front of the employee, looking at red monster with only a blood mark on its arm and feeling surprised. Unlike ordinary cultists whose true strength could be easily broken, the true strength on this monster was very condensed, almost 1 centimeter thick, and the defense of the red scales was also extraordinary. Although he had not used sword chi in that strike, his current strength and subsonic slash could tear through even a tank's armor. But in this situation, Jack only managed to tear through its protective true strength and barely scratched the surface of the monster's scales. The red monster looked coldly at Jack, its voice hoarse and heavy, "You're not a second-layer cultivator." Originally, the monster thought Jack was a freshman and didn't take him seriously. It planned to kill the female receptionist and several employees first to prevent them from exposing more information if they escaped. But unexpectedly, this freshman was quite strong, capable of tearing through its protective true strength and repelling it with a single strike. Jack, standing with his sword, said calmly, "When did one ever say I was in the second layer heaven?" As he spoke, a faint layer of black true strength appeared on his body. However, compared to the red monster's true strength that was 1 centimeter thick, Jack's true strength on his body was only a thin layer, and that was only after his true strength doubled due to his breakthrough in sword skills. He couldn't help it, as he had only broken through the third layer heaven 3 days ago. How is it possible? Weren't the freshmen in your batch only cultivating for more than 2 months? The red monster showed horror and disbelief in its eyes. Jack didn't mind and replied, "I indeed only cultivated for more than 2 months, but is the third layer heaven that difficult?" Of course, he didn't say these words to boast but to provoke the monster. Jack was well aware that his rapid breakthrough was due to the attribute points he had acquired. Damn, all you geniuses must die." Jack's indifferent tone made the red monster extremely furious and envious. It had taken a year, even transforming into this inhuman monster and killing hundreds to finally break through to the third layer heaven at such a cost, but these geniuses. All. "I am going to kill you, kill you." The monster's blood chi surged as it pounced towards Jack like a demon emerging from a blood pool, exuding a terrifying murderous and bloody aura. Boom. A fierce and violent aura erupted from Jack, his entire body suddenly expanding like a waking giant elephant, fearlessly charging towards the monster. In his hand, the long knife was like lightning, with sword chi enveloping it and creating a raging wind. Boom. The sharp combat knife slashed at the monster's thick arms, and an intense shockwave instantly erupted from the collision between the sword chi and blood-colored true strength, exploding a halo of light. The substantial black sword chi was incredibly sharp, almost tearing through the thick layer of blood light before it dispersed. Clang! The monster's scales seemed to be made of alloy, sparking and shattering under the blade, revealing the tough and blood-red muscle underneath. Just as the knife tore through the monster's arms, Jack swung it horizontally with both hands, using the overbearing and violent force to smash the monster into the wall with its hands still held by him. Immediately, the brick wall collapsed with a bang, bricks scattering everywhere, and smoke and dust filled the air. In the corridor, the monster quickly got up as soon as it landed, its arms slashed with wounds more than 10 centimeters long and several centimeters deep, blood flowing from them. Bender. But the wound healed at a visible speed. Such a terrifying recovery ability. Jack squinted his eyes as he pursued the monster. Roar. The injured red monster became even more ferocious, its blood light increasing, making its body even larger. The terrifying aura almost filled the entire corridor, accompanied by a raging wind as it pounced at Jack once more. Jack's knife was wrapped in sword chi, his gaze cold and unyielding. He charged forward without fear, shattering the tiles under his heavy alloy battle boots. Bang! Plop! The monster's left claw gripped tightly, the blood-colored true strength circulating on its palm, enduring the tearing of the blade, and looked at Jack with a ferocious smile on its face. Ha ha ha, I've got you. In the midst of its wild laughter, the monster's right arm swelled, its muscles becoming more prominent, the sharp claws slamming down, ready to tear Jack to pieces even if it meant harming itself in the process. Due to its cultivation instinct, the monster believed that as long as it restricted Jack's combat knife, it would be as if cutting off one of his arms. But just then, Jack Clark's left hand let go of the knife handle and formed a fist with his palm, covered in battle armor. Bang! The black and blood-red true strength covered fists collided, and the air was almost squeezed into a substantial transparent shockwave. Under the violent counterforce, both of them couldn't help but retreat. In the struggle, the red monster's left hand felt pain, and couldn't help but let go of the combat knife. This blow was evenly matched. The result made the monster's face look very ugly and unbelievable. The person who originally gave it the blood seed said that their monster form had unparalleled strength and strong defense, and humans of the same level couldn't compete with them. But now, bang! Just as it was in a daze, Jack Clark's aura surged as he stepped forward. The ground shook, and he transformed into a black shadow, appearing in front of the monster. Bang! The black sword chi slashed horizontally, blasting through the air and chopping down with unmatched power. I don't believe you're tougher than me. The monster's eyes revealed a crazed look. It directly ignored the long knife slashing at its chest, its thick arms coming together and fiercely slamming towards Jack Clark's head like a destructive heavy hammer. At a nobleman at. Splatter. Boom. The incomparably sharp sword chi tore through the blood light, and the sharp blade struck its chest, leaving a half-meter long and 10-centimeter deep, terrifying wound. Blood gushed out as its guts squirmed. As Jack Clark struck and injured the red monster, its thick arms slammed into the air, landing on his left shoulder the moment he tilted his head slightly. Boom. Under the burst of strength, Jack Clark's body slightly sank, like an unshakable mountain. The ground beneath him cracked, splitting open with multiple fissures. At that moment, Jack Clark appeared to be more like a monster than the monster itself. The terrifying armor defense and strong body allowed him to directly withstand the full-force attack. Jack Clark turned his head slightly, his cold gaze fixed on the ferocious-looking red monster, speaking calmly, "So this is your strength. It seems a bit weak." At this moment, the red monster was completely mad. In its madness, it tried to sweep its claws around to grab Jack Clark's head, but he quickly dodged by ducking down. Immediately after, he charged forward with wild momentum, crashing into the monster. Boom. The walls collapsed, and amidst the smoke and dust, both of them charged into the advertising company opposite. The panic-stricken ordinary people inside screamed in terror. Boom, boom, boom. The two massive beasts tangled and charged headlong, destroying everything in their path, whether it be office desks or walls. The entire floor was shaking as the terrifying impact spread. Suddenly, the exterior wall of the building exploded, creating a massive hole. Amidst the scattering cement debris, Jack Clark held his knife with both hands, stabbing it into the blood-covered red monster's chest. He stood on top of it as they fell together from the 5th floor. The two fell from the sky, slamming heavily into a sedan parked on the side of the road. The terrifying impact completely crushed the car, with the rolling airwaves being extremely shocking. The sudden turn of events frightened the surrounding pedestrians, who screamed and backed away. On the wreckage of the car, Jack Clark looked down, confirming that the monster had lost its life and was indeed killed by him before slowly removing his bloodied long knife. At this moment, he was wearing black-red armor, with the blood-red liquid flowing over it. Standing on top of the monster with his knife, he was enveloped in a terrifying aura. This scene terrified many onlookers from afar. At the same time, some daring pedestrians were excitedly using their mobile phones to capture the scene. Jack Clark ignored those pedestrians, reached into his pocket, and made a phone call. Within 10 minutes, 2 military trucks had arrived. Some soldiers jumped off and saluted Jack Clark before carrying the monster's corpse away. Jack Clark also left with the truck. As for the damaged building, the wrecked car, and some ordinary people injured in the battle, it wasn't up to him to deal with. It seems that my monster talent will be exposed. On the truck, Jack Clark was a little vexed as he looked at the gruesome dismembered corpse of the monster. Originally, he wanted to test his limits and see if he could encounter a blood disciple, but he unexpectedly caught a big fish, a monster with the realm of third layer heaven, middle phase and late phase combat power. Though earning 10 contribution points all at once was excellent, it also exposed his breaking through to the third realm. After all, his classmates with average strength might be fooled, but Teacher Lyons, who presides over them, was not stupid and very observant. However, Jack Clark was only slightly annoyed and not worried, because High Marshal's principle is to cultivate geniuses, and the school isn't afraid of monsters, rather, they fear wasting resources on ordinary people. In school, where all resources need to be earned through contributions, there's no need to worry about jealousy and scheming. Otherwise, Jane Aiken and Howard Lee would have to hide. However, he will attract more attention now, unable to remain low-key. He has to be more cautious about certain things that need attention. Jack Clark was mentally prepared for this situation. After all, with his circumstances, his strength would only increase at a slow pace in the beginning. Once he accumulates enough power during the early stage, his growth will be explosive. Third layer heaven is only the beginning. Chapter 89. Dragon Elephant Overlord Body. Translator. 549,690,339. One don't know if Jack Clark's luck is good or bad today. As soon as he returned to the base, he encountered Sylvia Lyons, who also came back from outside. Inside the base, Sylvia Lyons looked at the monster's corpse being carried down from the car with some surprise. There's actually a defective product. Defective product. Jack Clark, who jumped out of the car, showed a puzzled expression in his eyes. The blood god sect's blood seeds are divided into 3 levels: low, high, and top. Sylvia Lyons explained. Those who absorb the low-level blood seed are called blood disciples, just like the ones you killed in the past few days, and they are very weak. Even if they grow unrestrictedly, they can only reach the second or third layer heaven, and their combat power is average among their peers. But the blood envoys who absorb the high-level blood seed are different. Their growth limit is generally between the 5th and 6th layer heaven, and they have a non-human combat form. This combat form comes from the 9-headed demon serpent beast's essence blood contained in the blood seed. It is not inferior to ordinary cultivators in terms of combat power at the same level, and even stronger. The leaders of the evil god sect who were suppressed by the Federation were those who absorbed the high-level blood seed and blood god envoys, besides some high-ranking blood god messengers. However, people have different physiques, and the fusion of blood seeds is the same. This is a defective product that has fused high-level blood seeds but cannot even break through the 4th layer heaven. I originally thought that under the sweep of that adult's will, all the high-level and above blood envoys in Koroya would be dead. I didn't expect that there would be one left here. He should be the person in charge of the followers who spread the blood seeds. As for why he was missed, it's simple: he's too weak. Sylvia Lyons concluded. Jack was surprised by this result. Unexpectedly, he accidentally killed the person in charge of the remaining evil god sect followers in Leicester City. Jack regretted. It's a pity that these guys are like programmed. As long as I try to force them to reveal information about other people, they go crazy. Earlier, after suppressing the foreign trade manager, Jack wanted to cut off his limbs and capture him alive. However, as soon as he asked a question about the evil god sect, the other party went crazy in an instant, burned their essence blood, and their strength skyrocketed. In this situation, Jack could only kill them with all his strength. Because there is a very weak thread of a strong mon's thoughts contained in the blood seeds they merged with. That thread of thoughts lurks and is dormant most of the time. However, When someone threatens to force them to reveal information about other followers, that thread of thought will be activated, affecting their will to burn their essence blood and fight to the death. In this situation, only high-ranked powerhouses above the 7th layer heaven can disperse that thread of thought and force them to reveal information. That's why we told you to kill them on the spot once you find them. After finishing, Sylvia Lyons looked at Jack with a smile and suddenly asked, "When did you break through to the 3rd layer heaven?" Jack knew that he couldn't avoid it, so he coughed and said, "One broke through this morning and then went out to find a blood disciple to test my sword skills. One didn't expect to bump into this guy." True martial cultivators can't see the specific realm of others unless they actively burst their true power fluctuations, they can only vaguely sense the strength of others, plain and simple. For example, when a high-level expert faces an ordinary cultivator, the ordinary cultivator feels inexplicable invisible pressure, which indicates that the person is powerful as long as they are not stupid. There is little reaction on high-order experts, in turn. Moreover, Jack didn't lie to her. He indeed broke through to the 3rd layer of the sword skill this morning. Sylvia Lyons paused for a moment, and then said in a relaxed tone, "You have good talent. By the way, one remember you were practicing the dragon elephant power, right?" "Yes, teacher." Jack nodded. Sylvia Lyons smiled and said, "Our school has a dragon elephant overbearing body true scripture. It's an advanced skill created by the powerhouse who broke through the 7th layer heaven after creating the dragon elephant power. Keep it up, young man. You deserve that skill." Upgrading to the Dragon Elephant Overlord body from the Dragon Elephant power not only makes it stronger but also saves time for transferring cultivation. Also, talent should be demonstrated. Under the leadership of those adults, the Federation has no such thing as suppressing geniuses. On the contrary, the stronger the talent, the more attention they receive, and the more permissions and resources they get. After saying that, Sylvia Lyons left with her hands behind her back, leaving Jack deep in thought. Dragon elephant overbearing body true scripture. Jack sighed and shook his head slightly. To exchange for an advanced skill, you need 300 contribution points. It doesn't sound like much, but when you convert it, it's only 300,000 yuan, which is less than what Howard Lee gave him the other day. However, the problem is that contribution points are difficult to earn and save. 300 contributions, it might not be enough to kill all the blood disciples in Leicester City, unless they figure out a way to make extra money. Actually, under normal circumstances, exchanging for advanced skill is something considered by sophomores. By that time, those with good talents who practiced advanced cultivation methods would have broken through to the 3rd layer heaven, or approached the 2nd layer heaven peak, and could participate in the mutated beast trials. As long as they killed more than a dozen level 3 mutant beasts or 40 to 50 level 2 mutant beasts, they could exchange for an advanced skill, complete with 6 levels. But who would have thought that Jack Clark would break through to 3rd heaven so quickly, before the end of the 1st semester of Senior 1? However, after reaching the 3rd layer heaven and wanting to break through to the 4th layer heaven, even a genius would need to cultivate for a long time, almost over a year. So, Jack Clark was not in a rush. Let's go out and have a try. Every bit of accumulation helps, and even without advanced skill, it doesn't mean we can't break through. With this thought, Jack Clark summoned the attribute page with a thought, looking at the dragon elephant power and sword skill that had broken through to the 3rd layer, and the plus sign that still existed behind it. When his attention fell on the dragon elephant power, a row of transparent text appeared before his eyes. Limit enhancement of dragon elephant power requires 50 attribute points. Current attribute points are insufficient, unable to enhance. What is limit enhancement? Can dragon elephant power break through to the 4th layer with attribute enhancement, or will there be a qualitative change? Jack Clark pondered. At dinner, when Justin Wellen and others heard that Jack Clark had killed another 2nd-level blood servant again, earning 10 contribution points, they were all very envious. There was nothing they could do, as they had been out and about all day, and only one guy with good luck had encountered a 2nd-layer heaven blood servant. Because Jack Clark had a previous history of killing 3rd-layer heaven believers head-on, Justin Wellen and the others didn't think much, assuming that the 3rd-layer heaven strength today was also average. In the following 3 days, Jack Clark worked hard at his job. But apart from catching a 1st-layer heaven shrimp who couldn't help but kill and found his whereabouts, he had no harvest. As they continued their hunts, the hidden blood servants in Leicester City became more cautious. Compared to Leicester City, where a single battle wiped out the rebel army and the remnants of the evil god sect, other places, including the cities where Crystal Leinster and others were located, were very lively. Today, There was unrest here, and ambushes and counterattacks were happening there. If it wasn't a case of the rebels attacking some small town, it would be about how many people were killed by the evil god sect cultists. Gurgling. Bubbles rolled, and below the river surface, the now 2.8-meter long black unique beast swam slowly, searching for a target to hunt. Seeing that blood servants are hard to find, Jack Clark simply focused on the heavy armored beast. At nobleman at. As time went on, the heavy armored beast's size grew even larger, and the accumulated evolution value gradually approached the threshold of the third evolution. Jack Clark had a feeling that once the heavy armored beast evolved for the third time, even if there was no breakthrough in true martial cultivation, its combat power would reach the fourth layer heaven. During this time, due to the heavy armored beast hunting every day, the wide estuary of mutated fish became sparse. Bender. There was no other way, as they were almost all eaten. After swimming for nearly 20 minutes, a 5-meter-long mutated fish with a 2-meter-long dorsal fin like a banner appeared. Boom. The heavy armored beast gave a powerful flick of its tail, and the river water behind it exploded in an instant, fiercely pouncing on the mutated fish. Because of the size difference between the two, the mutated bannerfish, which had just hunted a big fish, did not react and looked at the heavy armored beast with a somewhat astonished look in its cold eyes. Boom. The heavy armored beast swung its claws out, and the sharp, heavy claws shattered the river water, carrying a terrifying force onto the mutated bannerfish's head. Bang! Half of the mutated bannerfish's head collapsed and exploded, and thick, fresh blood poured out from the collapsed head, staining the surrounding river water red. Now, although the heavy armored beast was only 2.8 meters long, its weight had exceeded 5 tons due to its density, and its power had become even more terrifying with a 100-fold burst of talent. A casual claw could unleash a terrifying force of over 100 tons, exceeding the body's weight. In the red blood-stained water, the heavy armored beast opened its mouth wide, biting into the mutated fish and tearing off a chunk of flesh weighing tens of kilograms and devouring it. Delicious. After all, this was a freshly killed fish. What could be fresher than killing and eating on the spot? However, this mutated fish, if placed on the market, could at least sell for several thousand or tens of thousands. The heavy armored beast needed to eat at least a few of them a day. Wouldn't that mean eating tens of thousands a day? Thinking about this, Jack Clark couldn't help but be glad that he chose to release it. Otherwise, even the landlord wouldn't be able to afford it. Chapter 90. Winter Vacation Mercenaries. Translator. 549,690,339. November 18th. After having breakfast in the third-floor restaurant, Jack put on his battle armor, strapped on his long knife, and then took the elevator to the first floor with Justin Wellen. He then discovered that the layout of the first floor had changed a lot today. A few more staff members had been added to the original reception area, with a sign on the counter that read mission location. At the same time, a huge LCD screen was hung on the wall behind them, displaying a high-definition map of Leicester City and the surrounding villages and towns. Bender. Zach Lyons, White Veil Marcus Lee and the others were standing in front of the counter talking about something. Jack walked over curiously. Mission location. What is that? Jack, you're here. We just asked. And it seems that the Federation has integrated data from all parties to preliminarily establish an intelligence department covering the entire Koroya, divided by city. Starting today, we don't need to run around looking for the whereabouts of blood disciples ourselves, we just need to wait for missions in the hotel. When the local department obtains information about blood disciples or rebels, they will release missions to us, which makes the process faster and more accurate. As for the contribution points, they will be calculated based on the completion of the mission, including some non-slaying blood disciple missions, which will also be rewarded. It does make things a lot more convenient. Jack nodded. The situation in Leicester City had struck him as a mess. The official institutions were paralyzed, the law enforcement departments were being re-established, and the rebel cultists were infiltrating and fighting with the military from time to time. But after more than 10 days, the situation had finally stabilized. However, looking at this mission release platform, Jack felt an inexplicable sense of incongruity. He felt like he was going abroad as a mercenary during the winter break. At this time, White Veil called, "Beauty, Beauty, has the mission not been refreshed yet?" The female staff member behind the counter smiled politely and said, "I am sorry, we are currently liaising with various departments, and there are no missions being refreshed in the background for the time being." At this time, Sylvia Lyons came out of the elevator and waved her hand to disperse the crowd. "All right, don't surround here. Data sorting takes some time. As everyone Dispersed, Sylvia Lyons called out to Jack, "Jack, hold on. What's the matter, ma'am?" Jack paused. Sylvia Lyons smiled. "I just happen to have a mission for you. In more than 2 hours, a group of freshmen will arrive in Leicester City by plane. They come from 2 second-tier universities, totaling about 30 people. Originally, Colonel Cameron Raven was supposed to greet them, but he and I have something urgent to attend to, so we plan to hand it over to you. Take a few others with you later to greet them, and be their guides. Introduce them to the situation here and things they need to be aware of. The reward will be 5 contribution points." After finishing, Sylvia Lyons quickly left the lobby, as if she really had something urgent to deal with. "Jack, pick me. Jack, aren't we good brothers? Jack, I want to go too." As soon as Sylvia Lyons left, Jack was surrounded by a group of classmates who were all eager to go with him to welcome the new students. Without saying anything, there was 1 contribution point to be gained just by going around, like picking up freebies, and they could also show off in front of the new students. These guys were all excited. Ahem. Jack coughed dryly. "Brothers, there are only 5 points of contribution for this mission. It's not enough to share. It's okay, we don't want contribution points. I don't want any either. We mainly want to show off, explain our experiences of tracking and killing those blood disciples to the new students who have just arrived. I want to show off my wings to the new beauties. What's so good about wings? Are they as handsome as my golden armor?" Seeing everyone's enthusiasm, Jack naturally could not refuse. He could only accept all the rewards with a tearful smile and set off with 10 enthusiastic classmates. Among them were Justin Wellen and Zach Lyons, as well as White Vale Marcus Lee and Mullen Weiss. Of course, not all classmates were interested in welcoming new people. Some went back to practice, while others waited in the rest area. Since they were all wearing battle armor, the use of cars and buses would be inconvenient, so Jack asked the base for 3 military transport trucks and drivers, and headed directly to the airport. More than 10 days had passed, and the destroyed road had been initially leveled and could be driven on directly. However, when Jack passed through the small town, he looked around and found that everything was normal, with no discoveries. It was still the same military airport, but the overall structure had been repaired, and the place looked less dilapidated. The stationed soldiers were still the same small team. Standing by the runway, everyone leaned against the truck, bored. Zach Lyons said enviously, "I heard that after Howard Lee absorbed the demonic beast blood essence, his strength skyrocketed like crazy." Mullen Weiss nodded. "Indeed, the day before yesterday, I was tracking a second-layer blood disciple with him and the disciple tried to escape in an off-road vehicle. Goodness, Howard directly smashed the person and the car with a single pillar, an absolute monster." "Wow, that's amazing," Marcus Lee exclaimed. Mullen Weiss, "I suspect he has already broken through the 3rd-layer heaven." "Really? So soon?" Zach Lyons wondered. "It's possible." Justin Wellen analyzed. He absorbed the blood essence of 7 power-type mutated beasts, his own cultivation methods are a perfect fit, and he also exchanged resources with contribution points. For the 2nd-ranked genius in the school, it's no surprise to break through to the 3rd-layer heaven at this time, especially considering that Jane Aiken had broken through a few days ago. Marcus Lee genuinely envied. These guys are freaks, one after another. It's only been a little more than a month since breaking through the 2nd-layer heaven. However, it's true that coming to Koroya this time was a good choice. I originally estimated that if I had stayed in school to practice, it would take at least half a year to break through to the 3rd-layer heaven. But now, as long as the resources for cultivation can keep up, I feel that one have the chance to break through to the 3rd layer within 2 months. Added Nobleman at. Zach Lyons nodded. "I am about the same. Especially after slaughtering those blood disciples or suppressing the rebels and returning, the efficiency of practicing and absorbing the energy of crystals is several times higher than usual. I feel like my entire body and true strength in my Dantian is active, madly absorbing energy to become stronger." Justin Wellen nodded. "That's the purpose of the trial, to bring us close to death, witness death, and stimulate our inherent genetic desire to pass on." During the subsequent waiting, everyone shared their combat gains from this period, as well as stories about the cunning and treacherous blood disciples they had met. Hum. At this time, a hum came from the sky. In the distance, a huge transport plane slowly descended from the horizon, landing sharply at a low altitude, and sliding fiercely. The large fuselage slid on the runway, rolling up a raging wind, and finally stopped slowly near everyone under the command of the control tower. When the plane came to a stop, the prepared gangway was pushed close to it, and the hatch opened. Two middle-aged individuals came out first, followed by a number of young people, their youthful faces filled with excitement, curiosity, and anticipation. They looked exactly like Jack and his classmates when they first arrived in Koroya.